total number across the top that would be like.
Sit back in your seats, get something to eat, and watch this movie. Don't let the kiddies see it, because, well, we'll let you hear the beginning first. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
So what is your first and last name?
Here we go.
Okay, awesome.
Got the real start this time.
Yeah, the actual start.
Got the little jump scare we gave a couple minutes earlier.
Yep.
Yes, my
Just
apologies for
keeping you
that.
guys on your toes. Well, thank you guys for joining us again. This is the update log episode 2023.
23.
Yeah.
23, that's right. Episode 23. I'm losing track of all the episodes. Thank you guys for joining us again tonight. I am Rob, your host, and joining me tonight, as usual, are my two co-hosts, Matt, Greg. Yeah, how you guys doing? How's everybody doing? How's everybody's night going and current week? This is the hump day. I think that's what the kids call it these days, right? Hump day.
I think they've been calling Wednesday that for a long time. Actually, I don't know if any kids do call Wednesday hump day anymore.
Maybe not. I don't know. Who knows?
I'm not a kid, but I call it hump day. I mean,
Yeah, I'm starting to think maybe it's an old person thing now.
Wow. I mean, you might be right. You might be right. But cool. It seems like everybody's doing all right. Yeah. Yeah, Harper. Yeah, no, ain't nobody wants to do that, but we have to, unfortunately. Gotta do those adult things. But again, thank you guys for joining us tonight. Tonight we're actually going to be going over something fairly relevant, I would say, and it's kind of a two-parter in a way. It's kind of the tentative capstone for the Unity situation. There's been some more developments on there. Some more information has come out. Not that the information we're going to share tonight is not necessarily unknown. It's just, I guess the best way to put it, people have kind of put some dots together. And the second half of the equation tonight is going to be the state of the gaming industry as a whole. What's going on with it. Pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. Especially in the last year. I mean, we've seen a lot of upheaval in the industry. Some good and some bad. I'm going to talk about a couple of games that have just recently released, and a couple of games that have been out for a bit that are.
Greed works.
Yeah, we'll get to those games. Oof. Looking at you, Golem. So as always, guys, this is kind of our take on the information out there, our opinions. So again, take it with a grain of salt. Keep that in mind. But with that said, let's kind of jump right into it. Let's talk right into it and get to the meat and potatoes of the situation. Starting with Unity. So to recap for anyone that does not know, about a month ago, I believe, about the beginning of September, the Unity engine, Unity company, Unity, what's the full name of it? It's Unity Technologies Inc. Yeah, Unity Technologies Inc., which is, for those who don't know, a game development engine, meaning it is an engine, a piece of software used to create video games. Primarily 2D, but it can do 3D as well. There are plenty of 3D games out there that are made off of the Unity engine.
It's especially popular like in the mobile market. I mean, almost all mobile games use Unity, and a lot of the indie market is also reliant on the Unity engine. So it's like it's one of the two biggest publicly available game engines out there.
Yes, the other one being the Unreal Engine, which we'll talk about it in another video, I'm sure.
Some of the smaller ones are getting a lot of attention right now as well. So, I mean,
yeah, primarily
Godot. Yeah, Godot is definitely getting, and we'll kind of talk about that again to bring you guys up to speed. But again, to recap, the beginning of this year, at the beginning of this of September, Unity decided to change up a couple of things about their policy, namely shifting from, I'm just going to say it, more consumer and by consumer I mean the folks that use their engine to create games friendly model, to one that's a bit more, I've heard the word predatory used a couple times.
There are a lot of words we could use to describe that change.
No, but a bit more I guess the best way I can put it, monetarily focused.
Yeah.
So they added what's called the runtime fee, and basically what that amounts to is whenever a end user, a consumer, myself, Matt, Greg, any of you guys, decides to download a game that is made with a Unity engine, a packet is installed that basically pings back to Unity to let them know, hey, this game was downloaded. That circles back to the developer, and they're charged a particular price point for that install.
Up to 20 cents.
Up to 20 cents, which is, I mean, that might not sound like a lot to you guys sitting there, but think on
point
So,
is, ladies and gentlemen,
great games that were made with Unity,
greed,
Hollow Knight being one of them.
for
I mean,
lack
that
of a better
has,
word,
I don't know how many
is good.
millions of downloads to date it
Greed is
has, but it
right.
has in the millions. Imagine
Greed works.
millions of downloads at 20 cents a pop. I mean, that could bankroll a smaller studio. Sorry, that can bankrupt a smaller studio in a night.
Indie studios, especially the
Yeah.
game devs that the developers that are doing free to play games where their profit base is based on in-game purchases are hosed by that.
Yeah. Or games that make it part of their strategy to have a very low price point, such as Vampire Survivors. Very small price point for that game for a ton of fun, but obviously that becomes a lot more difficult to manage when, if your strategy is sell a lot, like sell a lot of copies for a small amount, that strategy almost pretty much directly backfires because of that runtime fee
Mhm.
installation bit.
Yeah. And Harper brings up a really good point. It also risks them not presenting demos, which is part of some games' marketing strategies to get people interested in their games, to give people kind of a first look. I believe, and I could be wrong on this, so bear with me. Demos were included in that when the initial rollout of this runtime fee kind of came down a pipe. Now, since then, again, it's been about a month, maybe a little longer. Long story short, there, Unity has pretty much walked back that entire thing. And a couple of folks, namely the now former CEO, John Rosatello, was part of that whole thing. But it again, information has come out over the last month that is a bit deeper of a situation than I think a lot of folks knew. We'll get to what the end piece of that situation is, meaning what they ended up giving to their the consumers of their engine. Hey, Lord Gasumba, thanks for the lurk, man. Welcome in. So to kind of wrap it all up for you, John Rosatello was the now former CEO of Unity Technologies, former president and chairman of their board of their kind of board of directors. I guess is the best way to put it, right, Craig? Essentially.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the board of directors. So he held two very key positions on the board and within the company itself. However, he wasn't the only one. Now, to give you a bit of background on John Rosatello, he has a history of I don't want to say this kind of thing, but he has a history in terms of checkered past, I guess is the best way to put it. He comes from EA. We all know what comes with EA. And he's been known and connected to a number of different games that have, or businesses rather, I should say, that have kind of not done so well kind of after the fact.
He's the type of guy that has talked about in his EA days, talking about Battlefield, about essentially charging players per reload. So
yeah, $1 per reload.
That's how heavily focused this guy is on monetization compared to essentially creating a fun game or a better product. His focus is very much the monetization piece.
Well, that was his job.
Yeah,
it was his job.
Again,
on one hand, yes,
but
that was his job. Period. That was his job.
Yeah,
that was his job. I mean, his job is to make sure the company makes money. That's point. Period. Make sure the company makes money. That's his job.
True, but
I mean,
games also make money.
You're not wrong, Omangares. He's definitely one of the key players to bring loot boxes and kind of microtransactions and monetizations together. He's not the only one. All right, so don't get it twisted. He is not the only one. But
What?
he is
But
part
if
of that particular problem.
if people didn't pay for that stuff, then it wouldn't be there.
Oh no, that is. I
That's
was
the
just about to say that we as consumers are also part of that problem because
I'm not defending John Riccitiello, okay, because I mean the man does have a it is his job. It's what he does well. He's proven that over and over again. It's what he does well. Doesn't mean that he's not much higher than Ponscum, in my opinion, but that's what he does, and he does it very well. So companies hire him to do that.
Yeah, and this was no different. And again, exactly, Old Man Garrus, he is good at making businesses money. And I was going to say again, not like Greg, I'm not defending kind of the direction taken in current year.
I don't want to
Unity.
attack the guy. That's the thing, because he's good at his job, But
Yeah, I mean, and again, there are multiple sides to this particular situation. With John Riccitiello, he got, so to give you guys some context, he got hired to Unity in 2014. Up until 2020, when the company went public, and up until last month, nobody really knew his name. You want to know why? Because he did his job, and he did it well. And Unity it went from that no-name engine that some people use to being the backbone of the mobile game industry and a lot of the some of the 3D games that we all know and love. All right, if you're gonna throw shade, then you gotta admit that, hey, he made some good calls in his time as CEO. This one call though, while he had a hand in it, I'm gonna say it now. I will say wasn't the only one, and my opinion, based on the information that I'm gonna share with you guys, he wasn't even the primary mover on this one. He was just the guy to take the hit. And let me shut up because I know Matt and Greg have also done their research, so I want these guys to start chiming in. Because I mean, yeah,
I'm gonna let Matt go first because I'm sure I will have something to say in rebuttal to what he has to say.
usually do. So, of course, one thing to premise is that a lot of what we're going to talk about is going to be speculation because there are things we know and things we don't know, and so we're going to be speculating about a lot of like reasons why. Because obviously, when it comes to whose idea was this whole thing, we're probably never going to know. It could have been John Riccitiello himself, or it could have been someone else on like the board of directors or whatever.
Or all of the above.
Or all the above, yeah. So like keep that in mind as we're kind of talking through this. That this is very much like what we think, but there are definitely some things we do know. Old Man Garrus brings up Iron Source, and yes, Iron Source acquisition is honestly a big part of everything that's been going down. Because with Iron Source came its CEO, Tomar Barziv, onto the board of directors, as well as two other people who
intern CEO.
Yeah, and so
current interim CEO, yes,
yeah. And so, along with him, at the same time of that acquisition, came two new board of director members from investment firms, Sequoia and Silver Lake, who invested into the deal. So, because of that, they invested into the deal of that acquisition. They also got onto the board of directors. I remember who was it? Egon Durbin of was he Sequoia?
Egon Durbin is, I believe, Silver Lake, and Roloff Balta, I think his name is from Sequoia. Sequoia Capital.
Yeah,
I believe.
So I think those are like some of the most notable names behind the scenes, because everyone hears John Riccitiello because he's the CEO, but these three individuals, as well as other members of the board of directors, also have a lot of power in the company. And one thing, and so So when it came to Tomar Barziv and Iron Source, We talked about this a bit in our last podcast where we kind of really went over the Unity situation in detail. I'll try to keep it a little brief for this bit here.
As one of our people said, we shit on Unity. Wasn't that the comment?
Yeah, that was the
So
comment.
it's because we care, because this is honestly this is pretty big for developers everywhere, and
Yeah, I
so
mean the
it's
entire industry
yeah.
was up in arms about this, so it's not a small thing.
Yeah, and it's because like we care, we want things to be better. But anyway, so with Iron Source, this was a very interesting uh situation because Iron Source is they're kind of like a monetization platform. That's kind of what they specialize in, and even they kind of have a spotty history involvement with malware. So they don't have the best track record. So already when that acquisition happened, a lot of people were raising some brows and not feeling good because it's a not the most reputable company. But at the same time of that deal was another company called AppLovin, who are pretty much do the same thing as Iron Source. They're kind of monetization platforms, mainly focusing on the mobile market, who are trying to acquire Unity. So we have two rival companies essentially trying to get in with Unity, and Iron Source happened to win. And then part of this whole runtime fee debacle that happened was
Hey,
that
Matt, wait a minute. Let's just give the details behind that really quick before we move away from talking about that deal.
okay, go ahead.
Because the Iron Source deal, and this is big. This is why this is such a big issue. Okay, because the Iron Source deal, essentially Unity bought Iron Source for $4 billion. Sounds like a lot of money.
Yeah, with Sequoia and Silver Lakes, I think investing about what was it, $1 billion each?
Yeah,
Right,
it was 1 billion from two of them. And
right.
what's significant about Sequoia Capital and Silver Lake coming in is the other folks. So to give you guys some context, Tomar Barzeev is the CEO of and co-founder of Iron Source. Roloff Botha and Egon Durbin are with Sequoia Capital and Silver Lake respectively. I believe Egon is with Silver Lake.
Well,
I believe he's also CEO of Silver Lake.
Well, and this goes. I mean, it goes a step further. Even you kind of took that next step in there. At the same time that this happened, they also ended up with 11 out of the 13 board members for Unity are people that are directly involved with this deal in one way or another. They're either part of one of these investment groups or they're part of Iron Source.
Yeah,
so
a lot of investment firms. That's
at the same time, this other company was offering them. Do you remember how much?
It was like
I believe it was so. AppLovin was offering them. Initial research said it was like 20 million, but recently it was close to like 17. So we'll say between $17 billion, 17 and 20 billion, billion with a B dollars.
Yeah, a lot bigger
for
of
a
a
merger.
deal than Iron Source was, which is definitely a very interesting thing to think about. Why
They didn't take
Unity
it.
ended up going with Iron Source instead of AppLovin. One difference is that AppLovin was trying to acquire Unity, whereas Unity essentially acquired Iron Source. So there was a bit of a difference in the, I guess, hierarchy structure in that case, but big difference in the money involved also.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, Iron Source has a history behind them. I mean, they are. I can't even think of a good analogy right now, but I mean, they've got a bad connotation with them because of how they handle their business.
Yeah. Well, I think I know where you were getting at. So, and I don't mean to interrupt you. I apologize, Greg. But to add to that reputation, the reason why they have such a bad reputation is the monetization practices. So early on in Iron Source's life cycle, they had basically malware installed on a lot of their software. So if you were to download a game with any of their software on it, you were downloading malware onto your machine. and it was confirmed. Like that is a known thing. It was no speculation. It was a thing. So
Yeah, so a lot of people weren't happy with that Iron Source acquisition when it happened in 2022.
Yeah, not shady at all. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely
Nope.
not shady whatsoever. Come on,
Yep.
this is all up on the it's all on the up and up, you know.
Yeah, so it's definitely nothing to see here, folks. Just just put your blinders on, go back to sipping your Mountain Dew and playing your video games. Yeah, I mean it's true. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, Greg. Go ahead, man.
I interrupted Matt. I wanted to get those details out there because I think it's
Yeah.
important that people understand, the money piece to this, because this whole thing is all about
about money.
money. Right.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah. Before I was trying to gleam over it a little quickly because we've gone over some of it before in our previous podcast, but you're right. It's important to still keep in some of those for the current discussion. So thank you for kind of interjecting there. But back to what I was saying, and how this kind of Iron Source and AppLovin directly evolve into this runtime fee thing is that Unity began to offer a waiver to that runtime fee if they use if developers used a service called, I think it was Level Play, something very similar to that. If I'm incorrect on that, but it's essentially an Iron Source service for I believe managing monetization platforms, and that was pretty much say, hey, use Iron Source's service instead of AppLovin's, and we'll waiver that runtime fee. So it was an active move from Iron Source to essentially muscle AppLovin out of the business, because AppLovin, mobile market is very reliant on Unity. That's a heavy blow, and so that was a big part of the runtime fee as pretty much an attack on AppLovin. So you kind of see that like Unity was almost like this war ground for a battle between Iron Source and AppLovin. And let me tell you, AppLovin, they're striking back, because this was announced a couple weeks ago by AppLovin. They call it Project Unifree. So a bit of context for what they're doing is that because of the changes to Unity, a lot of developers are looking at other options other than Unity because they don't trust the platform anymore. And a big problem is that a lot of them are kind of stuck, because when you're already like well into development of a game, transitioning to a new engine is a very time expensive and just cost expensive to try to do. And so what AppLovin is beginning the development of is tools to help developers essentially translate their code from Unity to essentially other engines. I believe like Unreal, Godot. I believe there was like one other that they included.
Yeah.
So they're like saying, "Hey, you guys want to get out of Unity? We'll help." Now, granted, that was their announcement of beginning the development. So what they put forth was more proof of concept. So obviously, it's going to be a ways out before that actually gets completed, and I'm sure they're going to charge a price for that service to be used. But it's exactly the kind of service that I think people would be looking for, because in our last podcast when we talked about this, we talked about that very problem where a lot of people are jumping ship, yes, but there are also many who feel trapped because they're already making their games in Unity and can't just change like that.
Well, it's expensive.
Yeah, very much so. And so AppLovin is going for those exact types with this service. And so they're clapping back at Unity and Iron Source for that whole deal.
Yep. I mean, a lot of studios basically have turned off. basically the ad revenue. I believe it's like the ad revenue piece.
Yeah,
to
they're
the software.
their ad services in
Yeah, there we go.
protest,
That's
which
yeah.
when
Which
you
is a good and a bad thing because Unity kind of turned around and said, okay, well, if you're going to turn those off, we're just not going to promote you. So it's again, it's it got
it's
ugly.
it's a rough position, but it's like when you want to protest against a company,
Got him in the
like
wallet.
just yelling on Twitter isn't going to be enough. The only way you'll really make them listen is if you affect their bottom line. And so a lot of those developers turning off their ad services was their way of doing that. It's also, like as we said, it also affects their own revenue, and so it's they're playing hardball with that one. They're like they're putting their own livelihoods on the line as well, but that's how strongly they feel about it.
Well, yeah. I mean, we've outlined kind of basically what most of, and here's the thing, folks, who don't kind of know. While yes, Unity makes up most, if not all, of the mobile games created out there, which a lot of those mobile games are under umbrella corporations, larger parent companies that have tons and tons of money. Some of them are independent and kind of smaller indie studios. But it's not just them. It is the the primary users of the Unity engine are indie studios, smaller, 3, 4 single man teams who are just wanting to put out a game that they've kind of had in the back of their head for a minute, and Unity is one of the platforms that can allow them to do that. The other one's Unreal, but most steered to Unity primarily because a lot of the indie devs typically tend to do 2D and kind of lower, not in quality, but lower scale. I don't want to say difficulty because that's disingenuous, because creating a game is not just easy mode, whether it's 2D or 3D. Basically, it's the engine for the indie developer.
Yeah, the main thing is that Unreal is fantastic for 3D spaces. That's like very much what they specialize in and continue to develop in very much. And they're very good at dealing with that area. However, Unreal is not the best when it comes to 2D spaces. Right now, the ones at the top of that game are Unity, and a lot of indie devs like to go into the 2D, make 2D games. Because making a 2D sprite is a little cheaper than making a fully 3D model.
Like photorealistic model.
Yeah, and so one of the troubles is that when Unity goes to shit, and you have a lot of indie developers who make 2D games, they're looking at their other options. So Unreal, it's the next biggest engine overall, but not the best for what they want to do. So this has brought a lot of attention over to a engine called Godot, which is from what I've heard is also quite good at dealing with 2D. It doesn't have quite the same range of features as Unity does, because obviously it's a smaller engine and Unity is pretty big, so they've had a lot of time to develop a lot of tools. But a lot of attention has been brought to Godot. A lot of people have donated to funds, so so Godot may very well be. It's been receiving a lot of attention, a lot of new users, and a lot of money. So they're kind of in the process of rising a good bit because of this whole debacle.
Mm-hmm.
Which I was before this whole thing went down, I was thinking maybe I should look into Unity some, and then this went down.
Oh, never mind.
This is a Godot guy over here. Maybe I'm gonna look into them a bit. Maybe learn that.
A lot of developers, former. Well, I'd say maybe at the moment, current Unity developers, like guys from Hollow Knight. I can't remember the studio's name off the top of my damn head. So many names. But I know a number of other big names have basically. I think Matt mentioned earlier, started a fund, essentially a GoFundMe for Godot, and I mean they have a significant amount of money heading their way for development purposes, and it's going pretty well. As far as I know. Yeah, Team Cherry. There we go. Thank you. So kind of to circle back at the current state of things. So yeah, John Riccitiello has stepped down as chairman of the board and CEO of Unity. In his place is a gentleman by the name of James M. Whitehurst, who's been appointed the interim CEO until they find a more permanent candidate. And he is stepping up to be a member of the board of directors. However, Olaf Botha, again, one of those folks from the investment firms, has taken Riccitiello's place as chairman of the board of directors. So, I mean, again, we've said it, a little bit before. This is about money, and those folks who kind of started this avalanche or were involved in starting this avalanche, shitstorm, whatever you want to call it, are still in charge of the board. And I mean, for those of you who don't know, if you have a board of directors on your company, you answer to them. Even if you're the CEO, you answer to them. Point blank. Period.
Yeah. And so, like, while plenty of people are kind of rejoicing at John Riccitiello retiring from the company, it's like saying we've won the battle but not the war, because again, going to a bit of speculation, but it's hard to say whose idea this whole thing was. It could have been John Riccitiello's, or he could have simply just been the scapegoat for the blowback that everyone knew was going to happen. That whole bit is speculation. It would kind of make sense if that was the case, because again, like, he had to answer to the board of directors, and so it's very likely that this whole decision originated from that board of directors, and he was just the face that had to take the fall for the whole thing. So that could very well mean that essentially the problem is still there in Unity. Yeah,
and honestly, I will agree with that sentiment 100%. The issue's still there. The folks that are eventually going to try this, because they're going to try this again. And again, guys, this is my 2 cents speculation at this point. They're going to try again. Maybe a little bit down the line, maybe after the dust settles, they're going to try again.
Well, they didn't do a full. I mean, they didn't step their offering all the way back to what it was previous. They did not do that. So, I mean, their revenue, right? Their revenue is still going to go up.
They have like a light version of that initial pricing model in now. It's like they took 5 steps forward, and when they got the pushback, they're like, all right, 2 steps back.
Exactly. That's essentially, and again, that the 2 steps back was basically them taking a page out of Epic's monetary approach to the Unreal Engine. So Epic takes 5% of gross revenue, and I could be wrong on the gross part, but I believe it's gross revenue for every game made in Unity. In Unreal past $1 million, I believe. So they did something similar at 2.5%, I believe. So trying to make them a more attractive option. But again, still going on.
It's a common tactic you see these days where they come out with the worst version first. So when they roll it back, it's like, oh, this is better. Won. It's like, way to go, you made your voices heard and we listened. Aren't we great for listening?
Looking at you,
that type of thing. So, and
looking at you, Watsy.
And so, like, one thing to think about when it comes to why no one really can even trust Unity anymore is because a big part of that is how they handle their terms of service. So, something that they previously had, and Robbie can remind me in a bit if this was one of the things that they rolled back or not, but they had it previously in their terms of service where the terms of service under the specific version of the engine you're using was what your deal was when the game shipped. So
Yes, they did roll that back.
okay.
But go ahead. I'll expand on that when you're done.
Yeah. So say you have like a 2019 version of Unity, the terms of service for that is what you're going to deal with, as opposed to like if you shipped with a 2020 version of the Unity engine. So that's kind of how it worked. Different deals for different versions of the engine. What they did when they came out with that announcement for their runtime fee is that they removed that clause that let people ship have the terms of service with the version of the engine they ship with, pretty much forcing everyone to go to this new current deal. It's quite a literal Darth Vader moment saying, "I have altered the deal. Pray I do not alter it further." So this was probably one of the biggest things. That specific thing is why so many people lost complete trust in the company.
Short term.
Yeah,
short term.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I mean, we're talking about all these things, and I'm not saying that you're wrong in any of these assessments. Not at all. But let's also back up for a moment and let's look at the reality behind this. Okay. Unity is, in this piece, they are the big dog. At this point, they are the big dog. Godot...
But they are a big dog.
In this space, they're the big dog. In this space.
Development situation,
specifically for 2D and mobile, yes.
Yeah.
So, okay, and that's what I'm saying. In this space, their space, they are the big dog. Okay, it's kind of on par with where Apple's at in their space. They are the big dog. But here's the thing with this. Godot, even with piles of funding, I mean, they could, people could pile $10 billion on them in the next month. Say, here you go. You've got all the money you need. Get yourself up to speed. Let's go. It's still going to take 6 months to a year for them to even be able to get to the point where they can begin to challenge Unity. Now, they will take on extra business right now, but they're limited. And that's there's going to be cracks there. They're going to have to take on new, inexperienced staff. Where are they going to get these people to do this work? And it's going to bog them down. They're going to struggle as a small company, trying to gobble up as much business as they can. And if they don't handle it right, they're going to end up being in deep trouble because their service is going to go to hell. Because they're not going to be able to take care of the customers they have and take on all these new customers and be able to provide the same level of service. That's the challenge that these guys are looking at as a startup, or maybe not even a startup, but as a much smaller company. There's a tremendous opportunity for them to grow their business, but are they going to be able to take a big chunk of market share from Unity right now? No, they're not. And so you get that in mind. What Unity did is a calculated risk. And I agree 100% with you. They offered up the worst possible deal first, which, I mean, honestly, they learned that from other companies in other similar industries that have done the same thing recently. And then they backpedaled back and said, oh, yes, okay, fine. It was maybe it was we listened to you moment. We're going to fix this here. This guy here, we're going to get rid of him because everybody knows he's just bad. At the end of the day, they have their Iron Source deal, so now they have all that marketing money that's going to come in. And that's going to be spread across all the platforms, all the versions of Unity. They have the new deal for anything new using Unity, which is at a higher rate, not a much higher rate, but still a higher rate. So they've increased their profit margins, and they've added additional revenue streams that they didn't have before. So it's a success for Unity. Short term, they go through this non-confidence stage. But as soon as some of these companies realize that, hey, I moved over to Godot because I'm going to trust them more, that's only going to last so long till they realize, oh, okay, wait, these guys are just not getting it done for me. I need to get this game done. I got to go back to Unity. Because they have the facilities, they have the capability and the resources to handle the project and get it done on time. Got to go back to
No,
Unity.
I
Uh,
agree.
It's
And
a
that's a sad
win-win. It's a
realization.
win-win for Unity, one way or the other. It's a win-win for Unity. I'm not on this. I'm not a go Unity side. No, I think this was piss poor thing to do. I really do. I don't think that this was the right move from a community standpoint in this gaming industry. People are going to remember this, but the fact of it is that it's going to take a long time for any of these other companies to get up to the level where they can seriously challenge Unity, except for Unreal. I think they're closer. They could possibly do it. Unreal is also a more expensive platform than Unity at this point, so they're kind of the high-end guy. If they decided they wanted to compete on price, then I think Unity would have a problem.
Yeah, because the thing with Unreal is that two major reasons that come to mind why Unreal would never, at this point, never have to do what Unity did. Number one, they've diversified their portfolio. I mean, they have stuff coming in from the movie and from the film and TV industry, architecture, all that stuff that requires photorealistic assets and visuals. They got that well in hand. And not only that, but in terms of gaming, I mean, I think it was in 2019 they made $29 billion off of Fortnite. And while Fortnite has kind of declined in popularity, that's still $29 billion a couple years ago.
Fortnite's still big though. It's past its
And
big
again, yeah,
major boom, but yeah, it's still big.
yeah, Fortnite's still popular, so they're still making money. Like they're not hurting for cash. Whereas Unity, honestly, I think this was a way to make some financial gains. And from a business perspective, hey, you do what you got to do, I guess. It is what it is, and I think a lot of folks forget that when they look at the gaming industry. They forget that these are still businesses, and the way that these businesses get to continue to make the games that we love and enjoy is for them to be profitable and secure financially. And if they're not, well, there's a problem.
Well, and we're also talking about predatory business practices, and predatory business practices are mainly coming from public sector companies, not private sector companies. Yeah. Most of your private sector companies are still passion-led. So the people that developed that business and built it are passionate about what they do. They probably have more of an attachment to the people that they're doing it for. They actually have a why that goes beyond make money.
Yes.
And once it becomes public, the why changes.
Yeah. Your why now becomes the why of the shareholders and investors that have invested in your company.
Yeah, which Unity went public back in 2020.
Yeah.
Until then,
and that's kind of was that was I think the beginning of the end. And I hate to use that super evocative terminology, but it kind of was the beginning of the end for the Unity that anybody who used it prior to the Unity that we kind of knew and loved at that point. But yeah, I mean that, like Greg, you hit it spot on. A lot of privately owned companies are very much still passion led. I mean, look at Larian Studios, Baldur's Gate 3. That's a perfect example. You've got them in terms of engines. Unreal is still privately owned. It's not a publicly traded company. Tim Sweeney still.
Old man
focus on the quality of their product, not just making money. Obviously, Unreal, they care a lot about making money, but they also care about the quality of their engine.
Yeah,
and there's definitely some argument of Unity hasn't really been focusing that much on the quality of their engine as opposed to monetization methods. Because I believe it was Old Man Garrus, when he was on our podcast, he said that a lot of people actually prefer an older version of Unity compared to what the current was. And Garrus, I see you're in chat. Remind me, was that a 2019 version that a lot of people prefer these days? Because that would be very interesting that a version just before when the company went public is what people... Yes, 2019. Okay. So people prefer a version of the engine from when it was still a private company, and since it went public, a lot of people have not preferred those versions of the engine. So that kind of tells where the company's priorities went, as they began to not care as much about improving the quality of the tools that they were giving developers, and more just about, well, the tools for making the games. They focused heavily on monetization tools,
Yeah.
and
And I mean,
the quality of the product began to suffer because of it.
it's no surprise, again, due to the acquisition by Iron Source, or rather of Iron Source, and that union. And again, not saying John Riccitiello is faultless, but up until the time the company went public, he was leading the company in a profitable direction without things like Iron Source and the predatory monetization practices.
So that's the point that I'm making, is that he did his job.
He did his job. Yeah, the company
all
was profitable
all the way through. There's no bad job that person did. He did his job.
Yeah,
I truly believe he did exactly what he was brought into that company to do. And it was, at this point, it was just time for him to move on. I mean, this is what happens a lot with senior level positions, is you bring people in for specific reasons. You bring people in that have specific talents to do something specific with your business. And then once you get to a certain point, they move on. Here's your stock options. Here's your severance package. Go find something else. We're good.
Yep. Old Man Garrus says, but profitable versus mega profitable is a massive difference. He was hired to make the shareholders money while keeping the product moving forward for future growth. Yeah.
Well, he actually predates the public offering by about 6 years. So, I mean, he was there to fatten up the company. That was what he was there to do. And he did that. And then over the last couple of years, honestly, I think this was just coasting over the last couple of years. He was a familiar face for the shareholders. They could hold him up in front of them and say, look what we've done with the company. And he has a past history of doing this with EA and making a lot of money. And then this last, yeah, exactly. Get ready to go public. This last couple of years with the Iron Source deal and looking at how they can further monetize the company, he's the perfect figurehead. He's that guy, an easy guy to take the blame if things go wrong. So he walks away with a nice little package. I mean, that's why he's retiring. I mean, not being
got that
fired.
Severance package, boy.
Oh, you bet. He's going to walk away with a nice severance package, and on top of that, and here's the real telltale piece to this for me. Okay. On top of that, before this announcement was made, about 4 weeks before this announcement was made, he started selling all of the stock that he had. Now, stock is part of how you get paid at that level. He started selling all the stock that he had, and he sold every share he had before this announcement was made. So you cannot tell me that he didn't know what was happening.
Oh, yeah. And so did those other names we've talked about. Tomar Bar-Zeev, Egon Durbin, Roland Bertha. If I just pronounced that last one very wrong. But yeah, they also were doing the same thing, and in greater amounts than even John Riccitiello was, where they started selling a lot of stock. I believe one of either Egon Durbin or Botha, it was one of them where they sold all of their stock. So all of these guys knew what was coming and decided
I believe
to
it was both who sold all of the stock.
It's sort of a Steve Jobs style move. When Steve Jobs was removed from the board of directors of Apple, he sold every share of Apple he had except for one. Now, he did reinvest a lot of that money, but when Apple stock dropped, in which it was inevitable that it was going to, he started buying back the stock at a lower price. So he actually made a shit ton of money and still was able to rebuild his controlling interest in the company. And I have no doubt that if you take a look at the SEC right now and the transactions that are going on, I will bet you that those guys that were selling, with the exception of Riccitiello, you take a look at those guys that were selling their stock, they started buying when the price went down. Probably about 5% down. they started buying back their stock. It's an easy
I'm
5%.
sure. Yeah, I mean, they're,
I can name that. Yeah,
they're
I'm
investor
pretty sure.
guys.
Yeah, you're probably not wrong on that one. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a smart money move.
Yeah, they're investors. That's exactly the type of
Yeah.
thing that they would kind of do.
Hmm.
So yeah, so that's obviously it's
That's
a lot of kind of shady business going on with that, and the kind of worsening of the Unity as a product for developers overall over the past couple of years. So that's one of the things that I say that like could very well one day lead to Unity's like fall in the long term, because they're not focused on improving themselves. They're focused on making more money, while the others, their competition, are still improving themselves. So as time goes on, like yeah, Godot isn't there yet, and I'd be surprised if Unreal goes into the 2D space, considering how much they've gone into 3D space, and that's like where they're making their specialty. Because the movies, visual effects, architecture, they're
yeah.
probably going to continue developing those tools for 3D spaces.
Oh yeah.
But Godot is definitely there. Yeah, there's a worry with Godot if they're able to effectively capitalize on what's coming their way because of this. But I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility to see them eventually, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually rise up to overtake Unity, because they're still trying to improve their product, still trying to improve their tools for people to make games with, while Unity, that's not their biggest concern anymore.
You know what the
No.
key is for that company? Knowing how to say no.
Yep.
That's it. That is the key right there. You got to know when to say no. Because as a small business like that, you have to be able to look at that influx and know when you can handle it and when you can't handle it, and say no.
Yeah, they gotta play it smart in order to effectively capitalize on all of this. But I mean, it is definitely my hope that they are able to do just that and rise up to be a pretty much a very considerable competitor to Unity, one who's actually trying to improve their tools.
Yeah. And we might see that. It depends on it all. The ball is kind of in Godot's court right now.
It is.
It all
It very
depends on
much
how they
is.
can handle it. And that is basically kind of our take on the newest updates in terms of information coming out of the Unity situation. But that's a nice segue into the gaming industry as a whole, which is the other half of our conversation tonight, and the direction it's been taking over the last 10 years. Probably longer, but I think we've seen the largest impact over the last 10 years, especially post-pandemic.
Yeah.
And I guess my take, and this is a very macro take, is it's similar in a way to the Unity situation, where gaming companies are not concerned with creating a memorable, a quality product, in the sense that it's mutually beneficial for them and the consumer. A lot of companies are moving to live service games, and by live service I mean think of your MMOs, think of your kind of your has to be online to play kind of games. That's essentially what I'm talking about when I mean live service. Games
Subscription
that are
based.
continuously. Yeah.
Subscription
Well,
or
some
battle
of them.
pass, microtransactions.
Yeah, some of them don't have to be subscription based, but basically, you have to be connected to the internet to play this game. And what that does is, again, it's a constant drip feed of content, in certain cases, battle passes. That has become a very large thing. Microtransactions
Yep.
in one form or another, loot boxes, these gotcha mechanics being put into the games themselves. And by gotcha mechanics, for those of you who don't know, basically they're a mechanic where either they're creating an artificial problem in the game, then selling you the solution for real money, or to gain a solution to the problem, you have to spend more time online, spend more time playing the game. And it's just a shame, because then you see, I mean, we've mentioned it earlier, in our talk, you see games like Baldur's Gate 3 where when it comes out and they listen to their player base, all these major updates that are coming out for the game completely free. I mean, obviously it's kind of no surprise there, but anyone who pre-ordered the thing, I don't know if anyone who knew this, but if you pre-ordered or if you played in early access, you got some deluxe stuff for free.
Yeah, and
There was just things that Larian Studios has done, and this isn't the first time they've done that stuff.
oh yeah,
They've done it from Divinity Original Sin 1 to now, where they're focused on, yes, making a profit. That's clear, but they are focused on making a profit in a way where the consumer, at the end of the day, feels like they've gotten value for what it is they've paid for. At least that's my take on them. Now, obviously, there have been other studios that have done similar. And I've noticed, and as I'm sitting here thinking about it, it's mostly the privately owned studios that are along those ways. If you're publicly traded, yeah, you got loot boxes, you got gacha mechanics, you got battle passes, you got all these things. I mean, look at freaking Overwatch 2. And now CS:GO or Counter-Strike for the old heads, the guys who know back in the day of Counter-Strike. Now Counter-Strike is gone. Counter-Strike Global Offensive is gone. You got Counter-Strike 2.
I noticed that there's a bit of conversation about like Diablo Mobile and Eastern Market, and when I'd seen that Eastern Market thing, immediately Black Desert popped in mind.
Yes, and here's the thing: I like Black Desert. I actually like Black Desert, and they've actually. I'm gonna update you there because I was playing it a bit ago. They've updated a lot of Pearl Abyss, which is the producers and now publishers of Black Desert, because they've split from the parent company. I think it was Koei. If one of you guys could look up the former publishing company of Black Desert, I would appreciate it because I can't remember. But basically, Pearl Abyss, which is the developer and now publisher of Black Desert, split from them, and they've revamped everything and gotten rid of a lot of those predatory monetary transactions and predatory practices, and have greatly improved the game. Like it's across the board. And yeah, but in terms of the Asian markets, I'll just put it this way: they don't mind grinding over there in Asia. They don't mind sitting there 8 hours a day grinding it out, boy.
Well, in a lot of Black Desert was, I mean, at least back when I played it, a lot of Black Desert was actually set up to where, the one unique aspect that I found in it was the fishing, because you could set your character to fishing as long as you had enough bait, and then basically log out of the game and your character would just keep fishing the whole time until you log back in. So that was unique because every other game you couldn't do that.
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. Oh, Diablo Mobile. Yeah, Freybrand 358 says Diablo Mobile was one of the craziest damn examples. Oh, yeah. When you had to spend literal tens of thousands of actual dollars to progress in that game. That's wild. Absolutely fucking wild.
Yeah, I think Blizzard, they've moved all of their major titles over to like a battle pass system, because they're moving away from the loot box system because of how it actually got like it got the attention of politicians, and the question of whether or not loot boxes counted as gambling, which, my opinion, they do. So that caused a lot of problems. So they moved away from loot boxes to the battle pass, which you see that in both Overwatch and Diablo, and they implemented it in such a bad way that you actually have people like Overwatch 1 was loot boxes, Overwatch 2 is a battle pass system, and it's so bad that you have people who are playing Overwatch saying, hey, can we actually go back to the loot boxes, because this is so much worse. And Blizzard is definitely like kind of the worst offenders in how heavily they monetize everything that they do. And like it becomes a problem because like one of the common arguments you'll hear from these companies when it comes to like, say, a battle pass system or stuff like that is like, oh, well, you can still get all of this for free. they may be they may be telling the truth when they say that, but it's about how long this thing takes to get for free, because they can make it so where I gotta look it up, how long it takes to get everything in Overwatch.
It would. I
Because
think it would take you hundreds of years. I think it came out to some obscene fucking number because I think I know what you're talking about. Came out to some obscene fucking number. It's like
this is
300 some odd years or some shit like that.
yeah, 327 years,
Jesus.
according to a Reddit post of how long it would take to get everything in Overwatch 2 for free, as opposed to just buying it. So yeah, saying you can get it for free, it's optional to pay for it, is
That's
while technically true, is not. It's such a misleading statement because they intentionally made it so excruciatingly painful to try to do it for free that yeah, it's obvious that they want you to. It's an obvious way to try to push people towards the paid option because yeah, they made it
they
intentionally
made the
for
grind so
intentional.
fucking disgusting.
And that's the thing that I hate to see more than anything else in game development, where they design an intentional flaw. Like they made it flawed on purpose so that they can sell you the solution for a premium price.
Mhm.
Elder Scrolls Online does the same thing with their inventory system,
Yeah, fuck
mainly
them.
with the crafting, because they have a ungodly amount of crafting reagents. In you don't have nearly the amount of bag space in your character inventory or even bank space to hold all of those. But what do you know? If you pay their subscription fee for ESO Plus, you get a nifty little craft bag that just automatically stores all of your crafting reagents in this infinite space. So and they offer, they do those free weekends where you can get like
Get
a
a taste.
trial. So and once you taste how freeing it is to have your inventory like that,
Like
don't
drug
worry.
dealers,
They
man.
they they
Exactly. And it worked on me. I was like, God damn it, they got me. Okay, I'm paying. God damn it.
It's like drug dealers, bro. They just like, yo,
It's
just here's a taste. Here's a sample. Here's a sample.
yeah, but it's that gets like some of the root of why exactly a lot of these monetization tactics are predatory, because they very much take advantage of human psychology in order to push people to pay for things.
Yep.
Casinos do the same thing in order to keep people playing and betting and all that stuff. So so you see a lot of those tactics at work in video games with a lot of the way monetization is handled, where yeah, like I mean, fuck, loot boxes, there's a reason it has very gambling like mechanics behind it, because I mean, casinos make a lot of money doing what they do. At least with casinos, it's gambling and you know what you're in for when you do it.
Mhm.
When the gaming industry does it, they kind of try to hide it.
Yep.
well,
So
because
that's
I
you're
step
but
up.
you're making a direct purchase. You're making a direct purchase of something in the gaming industry. Gambling works a little bit different because in most states they have to pay out at a minimum. I think it's 85% of what they take in. So in the way they bypass that is that you have to win something. So basically as you play, you're gonna win. And the idea is that winning then inspires you to want to play more. And eventually they've got your money and you're playing on their money. So.
Yeah, and now granted, I'm not saying like every monetization tactic out there is gambling. It was mainly the loot box system that was very similar to that, and a lot of companies are starting to move away from the loot boxes, and that's why we start seeing the battle pass more. It's less in that gambling area, but is by no means better for the consumer because of the reasons we've said, how incredibly grindy they've made it so that you're kind of you're either not having fun or you're paying money. That's kind of how it's set up with those things.
Yep, pretty much. And that's the thing. That's one of the pieces of kind of information and realization that kind of hit me as I was, kind of doing my digging and looking at a lot of the stuff for this episode. Is that a lot of games have taken a very much money first approach to the process, and it's hard now that we're in again, we've said it many times on the studio, we are a small studio, so it's hard in a way to knock them, because again, you got to be profitable, but at the same time, the three of us can really see a way to both be profitable and produce something of quality value for customers.
It's all about how you look at that transaction, because and you ask yourself this question: all the microtransactions, and I don't want to pick on any specific game. MMOs are just the perfect targets to pick on, so we'll just say all of them because they all basically do the same shit. So, what value are they actually providing you? And I asked that question fully knowing that everything that they're offering you is stuff that at one point or another was either free in the game, or you could earn it in the game, or it was created by the modding community. ESO is a perfect example of that. And I pick on them because I loved Elder Scrolls, and I played that game I loved the Elder Scrolls Online for a long time, until it became pretty much dominated by monetization.
Yeah.
And it really just comes down to, are you providing value? And, they can say they're providing value, but if you've been playing that game long enough, you know that the things that you're paying for are things that you had anyway. They were actually features of the game. Part of the in-game economy, which has been completely ruined at this point. They've taken aspects of the in-game economy away from the players so that they can make money on it. That's really what it comes down to. And it's not like the players were making any money. They were making gold in the game, so they could use the gold to do other things. But that's more and more difficult. And what you end up with is this in-game economy that is completely balanced towards raw materials, and everything else is just cheap. So there's no point in being a crafter, because you're not going to make anything out of it. You unless you literally go out and grind to collect the raw materials, which then you're not paying anything for, you're not going to make anything. And so people buy the raw materials because they don't want to do the grinding, and there's your market. So our approach to this has always been one of provide value. So we're not going to attach a fee to anything that we create unless it provides value for the customer. And I mean real value, not design something and then chop it into bits so that we can, charge a fee for this and a fee for that. And right.
Yep.
When you initially design a project, I mean, there may be things that you want to look at, DLC opportunities. But I mean, if you have a fully developed product, then you sell a fully developed product. And then you go back to the drawing board and start looking at how can you continue to provide value? How can you expand upon that world? How can you create new things so that the player has something new to look at, something new to purchase, not, something I created 3 years ago and I'm just now deciding to I'm going to release this now because I know I can make, I charged you $60 for the main game and I can get another 30 for this piece that I cut out of the main game. It's okay. It seems ridiculous. There's,
Yeah.
And I think it was Duelist Kind that said basically no, it was Grimwolfen, I believe, that said
From a profit motive, you're absolutely right. Whoever said that piece, sorry, Rob, but that's from a profit motive. You are absolutely right. If that is all you're looking to do is simply make money. Here's the thing: the health of your business is paramount. So, and old man Gareth said this earlier: business has to make money. Business that doesn't make money isn't a business very long. You have to make money. You have to be profitable. So, and then you also have to look at that from another angle, is if your business isn't profitable, you can't take care of your people. You can't provide the people that are actually doing the creation, the people that are doing the work. You don't have any money. So, eventually you just gotta close the doors and tell them, oh, sorry. I screwed up my business and went broke. Good luck.
Pretty much, yeah. No, I completely agree. And stepping into a business owner position and having to think about those things now, it definitely changes my viewpoint on some of the approaches to the business and monetization aspect of things. Don't get me wrong, we ain't having no fucking loot boxes and no battle pass bullshit. Ain't never gonna happen.
There's limits, of course.
But
things that you can tell, like, they need to make money, or things where it's like, okay, that's just the cash grab. There's
exactly.
there's a line,
And Grimwolfen had said two pieces of really good information that I want to touch on. First is, he'd wish people would just stop playing those games to curb the practices, but it's been shown that's what people are willing to pay, and that is exactly true. And we've seen it when the WotC situation came out. We've seen it when just now with Unity, there have been so many instances. I mean, another perfect example, recently, one of my favorite games, Cyberpunk 2077, CD Projekt Red, when that game launched, it didn't go well. Let's just put it that way. It did not go well. There was a lot of snafu going on there. And I pre-ordered the game. I will fully admit that. And you know what? Me personally, I don't regret it because I got value for my game. A lot of other people didn't. And I respect and understand where they're coming from, because while I love the game, while I love CD Projekt Red, there were issues. And long story short, they've done a complete 180. Phantom Liberty came out recently, and I haven't gotten to that content yet. Hopefully get there soon. But from people who have been playing the game and gotten there, well worth it. And again, that's a studio that I am willing to hang my hat on again, because they've learned. They fucked up, they owned it, and they squared it away. But yeah, Grimwolfen 100%. People seem to be willing to pay and keep shelling out money for these games that really don't give a fuck about them.
Guilty.
Yeah, well, again, I think the problem is twofold, because there are a lot of people that are willing to pay for it, but there's also the part that we talked about before, where a lot of these games straight up kind of manipulate human psychology to kind of push their monetization. And at that point, how much can you blame the average person when the tactics used are just geared towards how the human brain works? So there's kind of a split responsibility there. Like, people should try not to fall for these things, but at the same time, there's still the whale. And the whale is often two different types of people. Sometimes the whale, and for those who don't know what the whale is essentially the person. It's an industry term for a person who spends an ungodly amount on a game's like microtransaction and monetization. So like, they're how a lot of free-to-play games stay working, because most people who play free-to-play don't spend money, but it's the select few who spend a lot of money that make the games profitable. And so a lot of these whales fall into two types of people. Someone who just has a shit ton of money and they don't really care, so they'll just spend the money. Doesn't matter much to them. But there's also the type of person that has essentially problems with impulse buying, and like, people who are very easy to fall prey to these methods of humans mental manipulation essentially. And that's what I find so unforgivable about these tactics, is that they're aiming for these types of people. People who may not even be able to afford it, but have a lot of trouble essentially controlling themselves in this situation.
And yeah, I mean, Matt, you hit on a really good point there. Old Man Garrus also brought up another good point. That is a very real psychological issue in gaming, in just the consumption of media in general. And Greg, to answer your question, FOMO is a fear of missing out.
Oh
Like
yeah.
in terms of MMOs, oh shit, if I don't log on tonight and play, this time gated content, then I can never get the special mount, or I'm missing, this thing. And they do that over and over and over and over
Oh
again.
yeah.
And here's the thing.
Available for a limited time only. Get it
Exactly.
now.
Exactly. And that's the thing with gaming companies now. I'm willing to bet you can go to any gaming company out there, any of them. I'll even say the ones we love, Larian Studios, CD Projekt Red, all of them. They probably have folks on staff who honestly, it's called UX, user experience. Most of those guys have a degree, more likely in psychology, or have some experience with that, because they can design shit, they can plug in things, they can make things where it speaks to the psychological aspect of us, the consumer.
Yeah.
And again, that's not. I don't want to say that's necessarily a bad thing, because that level of design, that level of attention, also applies to when they create gems like Baldur's Gate 3,
Oh yeah.
God of War Ragnarok. Those games that really pull us in. Cyberpunk. Those games that pull us in and grip us, and the games that become game of the year. So there's this double-edged sword there, and I guess it definitely depends on how you use that particular asset.
Yeah, and just a quick aside, I love Polar Knight's comment about the perfect evolution so
that hurt, man. That really hurt.
But yeah, so back to the point. I just had to point that out because that was funny. But yeah, so human psychology is always going to be at play in games, because that's how you design a game. When you're designing a game, and obviously the designer wants the player to do a certain thing, defeat the boss at the end of the level type of thing. And so they have to design the course, be like, how do I help guide the player to naturally go towards the objective? How can I point that way? Maybe the road goes there, maybe just the way the whole level is built is meant to guide the player's eyes. Even just shape psychology,
and color
used?
psychology.
Yeah, in color. There's a lot of psychology that goes into making games, and obviously its best use is to enhance the experience and properly communicate to the player the designer's intent. If you see something big, pointy, and red, you usually think, hey, that's probably dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And if it is indeed dangerous in the game, then they did their job. They used those basic human psychology points to tell the player what they wanted without having to strictly tell them.
Yeah, they got to show them.
Yeah, and so that's the good way to use human psychology in game design. And of course, we have the opposite end of that spectrum, where there are those who will also use human psychology to try to, nickel and dime you.
It's called marketing.
Oh.
I mean, in a way, yes. Again, there's the limits. I don't think microtransactions, even if things do calm down and there's some pushback against how far certain companies are able to monetize their games, whether that's just the players making their voices heard, or governments creating legislation to kind of curb some of that. It's never going to go away fully, and there is ways to do all this with value. It's just again, there's a lot of times where you can look at that and be like, there's no value in it, or it was made in such a way to where you're just not going to have fun with the game unless you're paying the dollar bills up.
Mhm. And I honestly, that for me is the biggest part of kind of the decline of games. And here's the thing: the gaming industry from a holistic point of view. Games are getting better for the most part, graphically and just system wise, meaning they're running better, they look better, they're larger in scope.
People are
Across
able
the
to do
board.
things they couldn't do
Yeah,
years ago.
across the board, they're getting better in terms of that aspect. But where they're failing for me is at the heart of the game design. Again, these psychological and predatory practices from from a development standpoint, but mostly from a business standpoint. I mean, look at Golem, Lord of the Rings Golem game.
Well, a lot of the psychological pieces, though, it just take for instance the relationship building pieces that have been very prevalent in more recent games. Cyberpunk 2077, and Baldur's Gate, and there's a lot of them at this point. But you look at the attachments piece and what the psychological impact is. I mean, if for anyone who's played, the not the expansion piece to it now, but I mean the original Cyberpunk 2077, Jackie Wells.
Yep, good old Jackie.
Wow. That really was an impactful relationship that kind of set the tone for the game, and it drew you into it, and you're now invested in it. When and I don't want to do any spoilers, but when things happen with Jackie, you as a player are like, oh hell no, what?
I know, right? You're crying.
Yeah,
But yeah, but in regards to Golem, honestly, I'm so interested in hearing what was going on behind the scenes of that game and its development, because the level of bad that game is astonishing.
I'm pretty sure it's the lowest rated game, right next to Overwatch 2.
Yeah, so I when someone comes out with a documentary about that game, I am all in, because that game is fascinating to me.
Oh yeah, I know when someone finally does a postmortem. Yeah.
Yes, I am. I know there's a YouTuber called Matt McMuscles, fantastic name. I wish I could take it. Who has a lot of segments about called What Happened, where he commonly goes into like rocky development cycles for big flops of games, and I know he's got to be working on that one. So I'm I'm very curious for that one. But yeah,
be sure to post it up in the Discord when it does come out, because that would be interesting to have a Discord discussion about that.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be fascinating what's going on behind the scenes at that, because I suppose this is a bit of a tangent, but I'll stop soon.
No, you're good.
The developer, Daedalic Games, they're a publisher and developer, but after Golem, they shut down their development branch. They laid off their developers. They're saying, "Hey, we're gonna stop making games. We're just gonna publish them from now on." So, yeah, it did not end well for them.
Yeah,
No.
That's the end of that particular tangent.
I was just gonna say, Matt, you better stop. This is a no rant stream. We don't do rants here.
I feel like I'm owed a rant from time to time.
Matt's owed a rant.
I cut that one short too. It wasn't even a full rant. It was a mini rant.
He's owed one rant a month. It's part of his contract.
I thought we did rants every time. Okay, I gotta go reread this stuff. I'm confused now.
But yeah,
But yeah,
but
go
there are plenty
Gollum,
of
Jesus.
yeah, but I mean, there are plenty of developers out there that still care about the integrity of the game and providing something of value without trying to nickel and dime the shit out of you. We
Yeah.
talked about Baldur's Gate from Larian Studios for one. Like hell, even in their like FAQ section, they put it in bold. There will be no microtransactions in this game. They wear that as like a badge of honor
Yeah,
that
and they
they're
should.
actually trying to, handle things with integrity and not try to pump every cent out of their consumers as they possibly can. And let me tell you, they're like Larian Studios is essentially like the golden poster boy of the industry right now for like just being good and
Big-
respectable. Like
Yeah, and
honestly,
they're
it's
privately owned.
yeah, they are also privately owned. Another
Yep.
good example is From Software, the
Oh
developers
yeah,
of Dark
Dark
Souls and
Souls.
Elden Ring. They're also privately owned, and yeah, they don't charge you for bullshit. Like their games will have their DLC, and you will have to pay for those DLCs, but those DLCs are just quality fucking content. And I'm still waiting for Shadow of the Erd Tree. I'm waiting for it. When's it coming out, FromSoft? But they provide a lot of great value, and yeah, they're not like like Dark Souls 1 had durability on the weapons and armor. They're not like, oh, looks like you're running low on
Gotta charge you.
durability. Yeah, you could buy some repair kits now for like $2.99, shit like that.
And here's another thing I love about From
You know,
Software is
I
when folks find ways to break their game, they don't patch it out. I mean, unless it's like super game breaking. For the most part, they don't patch it out. They're like, okay, hey, you found a way to beat the game. Congratulations.
we should have it, and we don't, and we're not going to. But I listened to this. I listened to this and all the episodes. We should have a deal with Larian Studios. I mean, we promote them like constantly.
Hey, Laren, if Sven
Yeah,
Phoenix,
listen.
Laren, if you're watching, you want to sponsor us, wink, wink.
I guess I know we can sit down. And
Rob says he'll work for pizza and beer, so I mean we're pretty cheap.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong. I work for pizza and beer. I'm a simple man. Okay, just pizza and beer. We'll be good to go.
Yeah, but like you still see a lot of games out there. So like when we say like games these days are like this, we mean that in a kind of a general sense, but not saying like all of them are doing this shit, because obviously they all aren't, and you can definitely find those ones that are still treating their games and consumers respectfully.
Yeah, and here's the thing though, that the biggest thing takeaway from me from this whole conversation is that games, studios like Larian Studios, From Software, I mean, even CDPR, despite the situation that kind of evolved and revolved around the initial Cyberpunk launch. When those studios comes along and they do the things they do, and they show the respect to their players and respect to the game and the craft, they're an anomaly. Especially in the last like 10 to 15 years, they're an anomaly. They're like, holy shit, where you guys can, like, as a whole, the gaming community is like taken aback. I mean, it happened with Bungie when Bungie first came out, when they did Halo, and then when they put out Destiny, and they were that studio. Everybody was like, what the fuck? Because we were used to bullshit. We're too used to I mean, everyone, all of us, we're all used to the crap that gets put out. We kind of let it slide off our back, like, whatever. And it's honestly, I think it's high time, and I think it's happening slowly but surely. I think it's happening where the consumer base of the gaming industry is like, hold on, wait a minute, we want better from you guys. If I'm going to give you money, you're going to give me better. And I think that needs to continue. Definitely needs to continue, because that's honestly the only way these motherfuckers are going to listen, especially the publicly traded ones. Private ones, I think, honestly, I think the majority of those privately owned studios are definitely on the side of passion. Like you said earlier, Greg, they love making games for the sake of making a good game. And yes, they want to make money, and I guess the way they approach it, and again, I could be completely off the mark. I'm not a fly on the wall in any of these companies, but I'm pretty sure they sit there like, hey, let's make the best game fucking possible. It'll sell itself. Metaphorically speaking, obviously you got to do marketing and shit. Metaphorically speaking, like if we deliver a solid fucking product, this will sell itself, and we will make our money.
Hold up, are you trying to imply that people like good games and good games will sell? That's fucking crazy, man.
No,
That's crazy. People don't like good games.
people buy garbage all the time.
That's a far out there concept. That's a far out there concept, and that's kind of a big brain thing. But yeah, that's exactly what I'm suggesting.
But yeah, like that's definitely a big thing. Cause like I made this point when we, you know, in a previous episode where we talked a lot about Baldur's Gate and what that meant for the industry, because a thing I noticed when it came to Baldur's Gate,
We're trying,
is that
Trey.
it came out. It's a complete package. It wasn't absolutely broken on release. It had its bugs. I'm not going to deny it had its bugs, but it wasn't like unplayable or like huge major I can't play anymore types of bugs.
Yeah.
And it wasn't full of monetization. And I was just thinking, holy shit, this is how it used to be back when I was a kid. That's how playing a game used to be. You buy a game, it was a full package right there.
Mm-hmm.
They had to make sure it worked when it released, because back then online connectivity with other games wasn't quite a thing, so they couldn't just patch it. They had to make sure it worked on release.
Good.
And you didn't have all those microtransactions either. I'm like, this is what it used to be. And we have so many companies in the industry looking at Baldur's Gate and telling them, like, oh, you can't expect that type of thing. You guys can't expect that type of thing from the industry. That's an anomaly. I'm like, that's what it used to be.
Yeah. No, I totally. No, go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
Yeah, which the one thing to grant is that Baldur's Gate 3 is a fantastic game in its quality and and its scope. Like, yes, I will call those things the anomaly, because not everyone is going to come out with a straight fucking banger like that. What isn't and nor should be an anomaly is the way it's treated. It functions. It doesn't nickel and dime you for a bunch of shit, and it's just a complete package on its own. That should not be an anomaly. That should be our expectation with every game that we buy.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I love Cyberpunk 2077, but it was a major hit to their reputation when they released 2077 in the state that it did. I think before the release of 2077, people were treating CD Projekt Red as we treat Larian now. They were the golden poster boy. Everyone loved them. And then this happened, and it was a. Granted, they've made it, they fixed it, and it's a fun game now. And from what I've heard,
I still love them.
Fantastic, but it's definitely a hit to their record. And
I still love them.
If they ever tried to hype something up like they did with 2077, that's not going to work. They've kind of lost some of that trust with people. Where, even myself, they announce a new game and they start trying to build up hype for it. I'm like, I'm gonna wait a bit, see how this comes out. I'm probably not gonna pre-order or buy at launch or any of that stuff. I'm gonna wait to see how that comes out first.
Mm-hmm.
I trust,
and honestly, that's fair.
That trust piece can be fleeting. That's I just making a mistake. Okay, making a mistake, and I'm just gonna call it a mistake in this case, is not the end of the company. It's not the end of CD Projekt Red. And, I want to make sure we're clear about that, because they have fixed their mistake. It's not about making mistakes, but what you do about it. That's the important piece to it. So to say that, trust is just completely lost and nobody's going to trust them. Trust is stretched for sure based on what happened with that.
They can earn it back.
Well, they have earned it back. That's the thing. You look at
depending on the
35. You look at the 35 million downloads in the first 24 hours of Phantom Liberty. They earned it back. That's
In my opinion, they have. I mean,
Yeah.
here's the thing. With the difference between CD Projekt Red snafu with 2077's initial launch and we'll say Unity, for example, is that CD Projekt Red has spent the time and effort to own up to their mistakes and to rectify those mistakes. And now with Phantom Liberty, again, yeah, people are playing it and they're loving it.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah.
came back with a vengeance. They said, "Hey, yo, we heard you guys, Roger that," and they fixed their shit.
One
I'm willing to
mistake
give them
is
the benefit of the doubt now.
one mistake is not going to doom. You know what I mean? And yes,
Yeah,
it does give you a reason, because you're going to remember that, and gives you a reason to, on the next time you're looking at them, to look at it. There's a psychological course to these things. It kind of goes along with, you know, your shopping habits. All right. Let's say you like Coca-Cola. Okay. And you have one store that you go to, and you stop there every morning. You stop there every morning to get your fuel, and to get your breakfast item, and to get your Coke. All right. If you go to that store one time and they don't have your Coke, okay, not a problem. You go there twice and they don't have your Coke. Now you begin to consider. If you go there 3 times and they don't have your Coke, you're going to go somewhere else.
Yeah, like it's about the repeated mistakes is when people really start to lose faith.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, CD Projekt Red, it was a big mistake. Like, we'll say mistake with the way it launched, and yeah, that was enough to lose a lot of people's trust. But yeah, like, especially if their next title releases any like functioning, that's the best thing that they can hope for, because that's going to prove to people that, yeah, that was a one-time thing. You can't, like, that's not something that should be expected of us, and we
Mhm.
can do better than that. And that's how they're going to regain a lot of that trust. Again, they've regained some of it. I'm not going to say they've regained all of it, because
At least for you.
part of me, at least, I mean, okay, like, do you really think that they could hype up a game like 2077 was hyped up again? Like, for their next game, do you think that they'd be able to accomplish that same level of hype? Because they went from incredible hype, like one of the most hyped games of that year, to releasing that state. That was big. That was bad. So I think a lot of
honestly,
people are going to be very wary of the next thing.
honestly, I think they could. I think they could hype something up to that level again, and hopefully, if that ever happens, they can deliver. But one of the things, I mean, we've talked about it: undersell, over deliver. I think had they done that with Cyberpunk 77, we wouldn't be having this problem.
Well,
They'd still be right up there with Larian.
When you spend $62 million on marketing for a game, I mean, you're gonna
You
have
got to deliver.
and you gotta hype it. I mean, what do you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll say, if the next game they do manage to get the hype again, they're gonna have to have someone like Keanu Reeves again. Because let's be honest, like 50% of 2077's hype was Keanu Reeves.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's Keanu Reeves. Come on now.
So either they're gonna have to get him again, or someone as beloved as him. But that's
Well, they did get him
hard.
for
That's
Phantom
hard.
Liberty. They got him for Phantom Liberty. So
Yeah, but I'm not talking about like for a different like game, because at this point, Keanu Reeves is Johnny Silverhand. You know,
yeah,
he's that character within the universe. But like, I mean, I don't think they could just reuse Keanu Reeves for their next game of a completely different, like, you know, maybe it's Cyberpunk, maybe a Cyberpunk sequel, or maybe it's completely different, like I don't know, Witcher 4 or whatever the fuck.
I think it's a toss up, because in the gaming world and people who play games, Keanu Reeves is now Johnny Silverhand, but for the people outside of that world, he's John Wick.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Keanu Reeves, everyone just loves him. He's, you know, we talk about Larry Sears being the golden poster boy of the gaming industry right now. Keanu Reeves is the golden poster boy of like Hollywood actors. Everyone loves this fucking guy. He's done an amazing job at just curating his public image to just be a wholesome motherfucker.
Yep.
So yeah, it's
Yeah, I mean
Uh,
he's shown time and time again why he's it's right here, man.
yeah. But another game that went in a similar path of Cyberpunk 2077 is actually No Man's Sky. And honestly, I think their kind of Road to Redemption, like their initial failure in Road to Redemption, may have been of even like greater like scale of like how much they had to cross from uh people's ire to people's adoration. Because No Man's Sky is another game where
Super hyped
it's
and
super
had nothing.
hyped. Yeah, it came out and there's so many features that were initially promised that weren't there. It was so bad that it gained the moniker of No Man's Lie.
Yep. And
And
honestly, I think it was worse than 2077.
yeah,
It
yeah,
was bad.
it was real bad. But here's the thing: they continued like CD Projekt with Cyberpunk 2077. The devs of No Man's Sky continued to work with the game. They improved it, and they've come out with multiple expansions, and they're all for free as well. Like the only time you're paying for No Man's Sky is just the initial game buy. All the expansions have been free, and people now it actually has a good reputation now. And so it's a sorry, it's a it's quite a redemption story, honestly. No Man's Sky, because it's actually pretty well regarded these days.
Yep. Honestly, it's and that's kind of one of the things that it kind of segues into my next thing is the kind of industry is definitely has changed. But I think one of the biggest changes is, well, not biggest changes because I think this has been a problem for a while now, but I think it's starting to be kind of hit a critical mass is developer retention. I mean, in the last month we've seen so many layoffs. Last week we've seen a ton of layoffs. I know. I mean, I believe it was Duelist Kind. Yeah, Duelist Kind of Grim Wolfen said earlier in the chat. CD Projekt Red, their staff are unionizing because they've had 3 rounds of layoffs so far. There's other studios, and for the life of me, I can't freaking remember the names of them, and I was just thinking of them.
It's going on. Honestly, the mass layoffs have been a thing for a while now, for several years in the industry. And it just seems like recently we're hitting like another big wave of it.
Yeah. And here's the thing, for those of you guys who don't know, it's not uncommon, and to a degree I understand why. And here's this is kind of a 2-part piece, and I'm pretty sure Old Man Garrus knows about this, working in the technology industry as he does. But most people at we'll say Microsoft, we'll say Google, we'll say Blizzard. I'm willing to bet money. I'll bet money. Most of the folks that work at those companies, I'd say half to 60% of them are contractors. Unless it was when I worked at Google, when I had an ex who worked at Microsoft. Most of the people that work there are contractors, primarily because once you're finished with a project, unless you've got something in the pipeline, you don't have any need for those people. And it sucks to put it that way, but it is what it is. Like, you don't have any need for that personnel anymore.
Contract labor.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose then the question of like, when it comes to a lot of these big layoffs, how many of these people being laid off are contractors and how many of them are actually like full-time employees of the company?
A lot of them are probably going to be contractors.
Yeah.
A lot of them are more unlikely going to be contractors. And here's the thing. I get it. I understand why that's a thing. I understand why these companies hire contractors, as opposed to full-time employees. But I think there's definitely a different way to go about it. I don't know. I will be the first one. I don't know what that way is, but there's definitely should be, because that's tough. It's, and from a studio standpoint, it's understandable because unless, like I said, unless you got something in the pipe, unless you're a game that A has deep coffers, B you have a project already in the works, you have nothing for them to work on. So you're just spending money. So I get that, but I mean that's another issue that has been plaguing the gaming industry for quite a while that definitely needs to get fixed. But I think it's gotten worse over the last couple of years. It's definitely gotten worse. I mean, it was pretty bad during the pandemic. Got worse now. Like they're still getting hit. I don't know, Greg. What do you think in terms of that aspect? Someone who's worked, or someone who's worked at that high level to make those kind of decisions, more or less.
Well,
Like,
I
do you
do
see any potential.
Well,
remedy?
Potential remedy.
Something, because it's terrible. Like every time I hear about it, I'm like, damn, man, that fucking sucks.
Contract
Job
labor's
security.
contract labor's tough. It is. Typically, people who work contract labor, though, they get paid a premium price for what they do. So I mean, there's a trade-off there. You get paid a premium price. You've worked your butt off for a specific period of time, and you get paid well for doing so. Now, what it comes down to with these companies in the layoffs piece to it, and it really just, you're dealing predominantly with new product development. That's where the layoffs are happening. The game developers and things that are the people that are needed to bring a product to market. Typically, at a high level, what they're looking at is something that's commonly referred to as a burn rate. And what that comes down to is projecting cost versus profits. And you're looking at it from the standpoint of, okay, this is what it's going to cost me to develop this game. And you're going to look at that right up front. That's any good business plan. You're going to look at that right up front. What do I need? What do I need to be able to do it? What's it going to cost me? So you don't want to have overruns or spend over your budget in that area. You want to make sure that you're staying within budget, which that's hard to do sometimes. And there's a lot of projects out there that have blown their budget entirely. CD Projekt Red's Cyberpunk 2077 blew their budget out of the water. That was one of the first problems that they ran into with that game. Then it comes down to looking at, okay, now we're to the point where we're ready to release. Hold your breath and hope it sells. Now, when that initial offering happens, that's when you're really looking at, okay, what does this look like? What is my burn rate going to be? Because if my initial offering is weak, then even though the game overall may be a successful game, if that initial offering is weak, so I don't hit my targets coming out of the gate, my projections are going to be skewed. My burn rate's going to be high, which basically means that there's going to be a whole lot of month left at the end of the money. So we got to make changes. And what in that case, I mean, what are you changing? Your product's done. All your inputs to the product, that's all done. The only thing you can change is labor. So you start cutting people. And that's unfortunate in this business. In the entertainment industry overall, this is very, very commonplace, because this is what happens. I mean, everything goes into, all your inputs are up front because everything has to go into making that product. Once the product is made, your only input is people. So how do you, if you're looking at this thing and saying, there's an example right now out there of a development project that I forget what the name of it. You'll know what I'm talking about here in a second. The Kickstarter that they did, $20,000 was their asking, and they're over $3 million now, I think it is.
Oh yeah, Ryoko's Guide to the Yokai Realms. Yes, yeah. For those of you guys that don't know, go check them out.
Tell you what, the people working on that game right now, or the people that were part of the development of that game right now, are probably not worried about this whole thing, because they're on to the next project, looking at how well this one did. It's like, we can't move fast enough to get the next thing going. We've got plenty, we're flush with cash. Let's do this. Let's get, no vacation for you guys. Get back to work.
I mean, I don't know. But yeah, so we're gonna plug them real quick because I love the content and from what I've seen of the actual module, deserve they went out and put their heart and soul into this thing for sure. It is called Ryoko's Guide to the Yokai Realms. It's a 5e module that basically, if you took Monster Hunter and Pacific Rim and the Kaiju and smashed them together and put them in D&D, that's what this is. So if you like any of those two things or any of those three things, you'll love this. It's got 13 hours to go before the Kickstarter is done. And yeah, they were looking for 20K. They're sitting at $3.1 million.
Ideally, the way you're going to, one way to try to avoid that layoff scenario is to make sure that you always have your next project lined up and ready to go before the previous one is done. And that perpetual motion where you're basically just reusing the resources. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, because some will not translate. If you're going from developing, say, a single player game to a multiplayer game, well, that's two different things. Or like an MMO where it's online, millions of potential players, and the guy who's used to developing single player games is not the right guy to develop this other game. So you got to look at that as well.
Yeah, like just having a next project to start on is a big part of it. And honestly, we're starting to see that a lot of companies, they aren't really having that next thing for these people to work on. Because, like, I'll bring up the example of live service games, because the entire purpose of a live service game is you create the game, and it's supposed to have a very long shelf life, because they're going to drip feed content throughout for a long time. But obviously they're going to continue working on the game. However, they're not going to need that same scope of a team working on it after its release, because it's not going to be huge swaths of content all the time. It's going to be little bits here and there, save for the expansion here and there. So yeah, a lot of those teams get downsized after the release and bug fixes and type stuff like that. So they have a smaller team after that continuing to work on the game while the rest are laid off. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of just the design of it. So it's a rough thing, because like as Grimwolfen says, like you go to a very successful company, and typically you'd think a big successful company, there's job security there, but honestly, there really isn't. Like, not to the degree you think there is. The company's not going to go down, but when they're done with what they're making, you're expendable to them, and that's a big problem in the industry overall, where the developers who make the games are very much expendable.
Yeah, unless you make yourself indispensable.
Which not many people are in position to do so.
Yeah, see, that's really hard to do.
But one of the reasons that I, earlier in the conversation, we were talking about the fiasco with CD Projekt Red and the 2077 release and the trust piece to this. Here's the thing. When they released that game, and basically the world fell apart because it did not go over well. Their immediate reaction was not to turn around and fire everybody. Their immediate reaction was to go back to work, fix problems, and start working on what's next.
Yeah, they took the same kind of action that No Man's Sky did. They didn't just jump ship. Right. They wanted to fix the ship.
I respect that. So I'm more than happy to be forgiving, not go down the path of, I don't trust you now. How they reacted to the problem tells me a lot about them.
Well,
and
according to Grimwolfen, they've been laying off a lot of people now, and those people are starting to unionize to pretty much fight back. So
they have been now, yes. As they're finishing the Phantom Liberty project, they don't have a project out there.
or at least not one that might need that kind of scope, because they do have the next Witcher game in progress. I believe it's in pre-production right now, or it's getting to that stage.
The unfortunate part about, you got to factor in some of the economic things that are going on even outside of the gaming industry.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Well, I completely
naturally,
agree.
but like,
Completely agree with you, Greg.
I guess it's a complicated issue because like I get like the business aspect, like I do, but at the same time, from a worker aspect, you have low job security, and there's there's the very common problem of crunch within the industry. So it's like it's not the most worker friendly industry, but how do we fix it? Like, how do we bring the economic side for the business and the like worker friendly side for the developers? How do we bring those two together to where we get a solution that suits both sides? And that's like, obviously it's a complicated
question to answer.
issue, and I doubt any of us really have a real answer for that.
Well,
and
let's.
that answer is going to change depending on particular situations.
Right. Let's take that question to the absolute opposite end and say, how much more do you want to pay for your game? The games that you want. How much more do you want to pay for them?
Yeah.
That's part of it right there.
That is the answer.
That's part of the problem. It really just comes down to, okay, well, how much more do you want to pay for these games?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's the end all be all, but that's really what it comes down to. And the unionization piece as well. It really just, it comes down to, okay, now that, everything is going to change with that. Now, one way or the other, if they do it, they don't do it, it's up to them.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is now the company has to factor that in, and the price of the game is going to go up. Simple as that. Price of the game is going to go up because they're going to have to factor that in. They're going to have to put that into their burn rate. Look at it from that direction, and knowing that, okay, well, it's going to cost us this much, but it's going to cost us this much for this much longer. So now price has to go up.
Yep. And here's the thing, Grimwolfen. Unions can be good or bad. Well, unions can be good or bad depending on how the union is handled. And I will say marketing is a bit that is kind of out of the studio's hands in terms of the marketing piece. Because it all depends on the mediums that they're going through and how much they're getting charged from them.
Well,
I think
understand one. I don't want to get into a union discussion, but understand.
That's a whole
understand one. But there's one thing that you need to understand about unions is unions are a business as well.
Yes. Yeah.
So
you're good, Grimwolfen. It's like
you're good. Yeah.
Yeah. It's fine bringing up topics.
A lot of people just don't understand that unions. We tag this thing on there and think, well, yeah, they're just all about no, that's a business. You're paying your dues to a business. It's a profit business.
Which some do good and others, may not do so good. It's like as you said, it's a double-edged sword, and it's all about how they're.
It all depends.
And whatnot. But,
just like businesses, it all kind of depends on how they're being ran. And honestly, to answer your question, Matt, in terms of finding a solution to this particular problem, like layoffs and kind of all of the other things that we've talked about tonight, that. It's dependent on the situation, so each studio is going to have a different answer to this one. For me, primarily though, it kind of circles back to what you were saying, Greg. Making sure as a studio you have something in the works even before this project is done.
Mm-hmm.
Now that comes with its own host of problems, mainly burnout. Burnout, because if you got stuff always moving, people are going to need some time to rest. Making a game ain't easy. So now then you have to answer that question. honestly, I don't think there's a perfect answer to this particular problem.
There
Honestly,
isn't. There honestly there isn't. I mean,
No.
it's you use less resources, potentially use less resources, which means development time is going to increase.
be longer. Yeah.
Your cost is not necessarily, it may or may not change. Cost may be the same because your development time extends out, and so you're just paying less people for longer versus paying more people for a shorter period of time.
Exactly. That was my initial thought as I was sitting here thinking about it. I was like, well, you tie it up, you kind of scale down your teams, but then they're gonna have to work longer, which circles back to burnout again. So
the best way, I think the best way to handle it is to, have that product development piece. You always have to have the next thing. You always have to have the next thing. That way, as your resources begin to free up on one thing, you have something else that you can give them. And then it's not, you're not just burning money at that point, just paying people to pay people because, I want to keep them employed and I want to keep them around and they deserve to have an income and all these things. I'm not arguing any of those things. In a perfect world, we would be able to pay these guys and gals and whatever other gender they are a decent livable salary, something nice, and definitely worth what they're putting into things, and we'd be able to keep them on contract for an indefinite time period. But the reality of it is that unless you have that next thing to utilize their skills, once their specific task is done, once they've done what they can do in this project, what is the purpose?
Exactly. You don't have. There's no reason for you to be there. And I know that sounds fucked up, but it's true. And here's the thing: had you asked me this years ago, before I stepped into the position of looking at this from a business perspective, not just a business perspective, not just a creative perspective, but a business perspective as well, I would be like, yeah, of course, like you keep them on, no. And I'm glad that I have that perspective now because it's realistic. It's like if we have no projects for our people to work on, why do we have so many people?
I do have a really odd idea I want to throw out there, as we're talking about this. I just, because this is things that we tentatively discuss. But why they go, instead of going down this route of I want to be a full-time employee or whatever the deal is with that, why they haven't started to try to look at royalty pools where, all these developers that put in this certain amount of their time, their energy, their resources to developing this project are paid for their time in there, but then they're also entered into this royalty pool where they'll continue to be paid off of that game in all the sales going forward. It might not be a lot, but at least it's revenue they're going to continue to get paid for that work in perpetuity. I don't think that's a bad idea.
That's a good point. Writers are apparently the writing strike again, and I will preface my comment by saying I haven't looked into that. But apparently, according to Wolfen, the writers are on strike because royalties aren't being paid. And honestly, I think that's an approach that the gaming industry should consider.
For lack of a better word,
Mr. Gordon Gekko lays it out.
Greed is right. Greed works.
Welcome in, Lord Gasumba. Or welcome back. I know you were lurking there for a little bit.
Hey, buddy. No, we're not winding down here, buddy.
We're still going.
We're like, I don't know, 2/3 through it. We've been dragging our feet, talking a lot tonight.
Yeah. That's okay. We're just gonna keep on going until we don't have stuff to talk about.
Yep.
Until everybody leaves.
But sorry, Greg, you were saying kind of about that royalty piece.
Well,
honestly, I kind of agree.
I think that would be a way to approach it. And that's, I want to look at that for ourselves down the road. Something that we can do for the people that here's the thing. honestly, that's a hard pill to swallow for some of your content creators, because then their future pay is still based on the success of the game. And what if the game isn't a success? What if the game doesn't make any money? Because generally speaking, if you're going to add in a royalty piece, then they're going to have to accept less pay up front.
Yeah.
And a lot of your, content creators, artists, it really depends on how confident they are in the success of the game as to whether they're going to bite on that. They may not. They may turn around and say, "Nah, I'd rather just have my contract for $120,000 in for the next 3 years, and then I'll, then I'll take my papers and walk."
On the flip side, though, like, how many companies want to even pay royalties? Because that means if the game does really well, they're going to have to end up paying their workers even more than they otherwise would have. Like,
so
I don't
what?
think they want to do that.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah. Who gives a shit?
So what? If the game does really,
perspective,
well,
they don't. From the company perspective, they don't.
Matt, I never realized you were such a greedy bastard.
Yeah, but
we're inside of you.
I mean, that's what you see. Like as Grim was saying, Grimwolf was saying, the writer strike is happening because companies don't want to pay them royalties. There's a thing on HBO where they removed a lot of shows from. It's common in the streaming world even that streaming services will remove a lot of shows from their lineup because they don't want to keep paying royalties to these shows. Like, businesses everywhere, they don't like royalties. They don't want to pay them.
I get it, because it's money that you're paying out for forever and ever. And here's the thing with that. It depends on how it's structured. That's first off, because like a flat royalty fee that's coming off of every sale, regardless of profitability. Okay, yeah, that could be a problematic. But a royalty fee that's based off of the profits coming out of that, different deal. And where you run into a problem is does the project make money or not? There's a lot of films that are made that just don't make money. They don't make back what was put into them. So yeah, royalties are an issue there, because you don't want to keep putting money into something that already lost you $60 million. Now I got to keep paying royalties every time somebody buys this thing. Screw that. Stop selling it.
Pretty much.
But
but I honestly, I think that's a good consideration in terms of a potential answer to the payment issue. And
that's why the way I said it is a royalty pool. So you're not essentially saying to each one of these creators that, hey, we're every time this sells, you specifically are going to get this much money. No. You're going to have a stake in this pool, and out of every copy that sells, it would be priced into the price of the item. So it would be passed on to the consumer. But every copy that sells, $1 goes in this pool. So, those 38 million copies that we sold in the first 24 hours when CD Projekt Red could be learning from this, they could, Lord Gasumba.
Lord Gasumba with the 68-person raid.
Fantastic, guys. Welcome in. Glad to have you.
Welcome in, guys. Yeah.
Welcome. We're having the fun conversation of the current state of the gaming industry. Yeah. What a lovely place it is.
But that's the concept behind the pool. Anyway, it is, if it was done that way, and you know what, we have a few people in here right now that just came over with Lord Gasumba that I'm sure could talk about this a little bit more, with a little bit more experience than I have with it. So let's continue that conversation and see what they have to say.
Yeah, to catch everyone up a bit, we were kind of talking about the current state of the gaming industry, which we've gone across several different things, such as like predatory microtransactions, monetization tactics. Just recently, we were talking about essentially job security for the developers, because mass layoffs have been a problem for quite a few years now, and just recently we've been hitting another big wave of it. So we've been kind of talking
Yeah.
about, like, from a business perspective, obviously, like, business want to keep their costs down, so they got to get rid of people sometimes. But like from a worker perspective, obviously you want to have job security. It kind of sucks when you work at a very successful company and they just let you go just like that. And so it's a rough industry to try
Yeah,
to.
it's volatile for
Yeah, it's
sure.
very volatile. We're just kind of like we're just kind of talking about how that works and like what can be done to try to make it better, which is a
To
very
mitigate that
difficult
situation.
question to answer.
Yeah.
Well, it definitely
Yeah.
creates a weird working environment as well for people. But
And just for a quick second, I don't mean to interrupt you, Greg. Hold that thought. I did want to thank, first of all, Lord Gasumba, thank you for the raid. For those who just raided into our channel, thank you again for that. Welcome to the update log. But we did have a couple of follows, I believe.
we did.
Well, let's see. Let me scroll down a little bit. Let's see here. Cannibal one. No, it's not a one. It's just a cannibal. Cannibal, thank you for the follow, man. Let's see.
Duelist Kind as well.
Duelist Kind, thank you for the follow as well. Hopefully, Duelist, I know you've been here for quite a while. Hopefully, you've been enjoying the conversation.
Lord
Let's see.
Gasumba's raid reminded him to hit that follow button. It's like, oh yeah, I didn't do that. Okay, here.
So Cannibal says kind of like they only want you part time to get you on the cheap, possibly switch to more work for hire freelancer model of employment. I mean, yeah, we've kind of gone over that aspect of things. And honestly, Greg's idea of a royalty pool is a great idea. And Old Man Garrus, I know you're still here. He mentioned it earlier. But that is the reason for freelancers or contractors, is for that very reason. Where, I've worked as a contractor before when I worked at Google, so I understood that. Hey, I had a shelf life, and that was fine. That was fine with me. And honestly, for a lot of people, that is okay. A lot of people, that is they understand the flux of that particular industry, or part of the industry, I should say. I think for me, where the problem for me personally lies is when you're getting rid of employees, like people that are employed by Blizzard, Activision, Bethesda, Larian, that work for the studio.
A disposable workforce in a way.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
honestly, I don't think that's and yes, I don't think that's right to your workforce. I don't think that's right to the people there. Again, from a business standpoint, I get it.
Every seasonal business in the world does this.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Honestly, I don't think people realize that creating games is a seasonal thing. Once the game's created, that's it.
Yeah, I think a big problem is that obviously, you lay a lot of people off, but a lot of how these people kind of continue to live until their next gig, so to speak, is essentially their severance package from that company. But some of the things I've been hearing lately is how a lot of these severance packages are not very common.
Not really good.
And
Yeah, usually.
Because that's how these people survive until they get their next job. But
I think that's usually 2 paychecks, so about a month maybe 2.
I'm not sure the exact
not 100%
terms
sure.
of it.
Yeah,
I just know a lot of people haven't
sure.
been happy with the severance pay they've been getting.
Dinar Dude says Ubisoft needs to get it in gear, fire or hire. The Skull and Bones game needs to go live. I'll agree there. Like it, you can make up your fucking mind. Grimwolfen says it'd be nice if devs weren't forced to sign non-compete clauses so they can work on indie projects too. But he understands that there's a standard in many. That first of all, that is a standard in many industries, and the reasons behind it. And yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Like I there is a reason behind it, and there are good reasons, but it's kind of a tough pill to swallow when it's like, I could be knowing that, hey, this particular game is coming to an end. I could be looking for a position elsewhere. And honestly, that could be something that maybe studios think about in the future, where hey, look, if we're coming up to the last 3 months of the game, your contract is now opened up. You can start looking for other work, unless we're going to hire you.
Cannibal actually brings up something that we were talking about before the raid came in, and that was that need to have that continuous product flow. So
exactly.
You want to make sure that you've got the next thing.
Yeah.
And honestly,
absolutely.
And honestly, that is definitely the initial step, I think, in the right direction. No, you're good, Cannibal. Don't worry.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we thought. That for me, that's the initial step in the right direction in terms of, hey, make sure you got stuff in the pipeline to move on to.
That's our unique problem is we have too many ideas and not enough resources. So
yeah. Well, it's when it comes to like content updates to a game, like content expansions and stuff like that. The thing with that is like when they continue to plan continue development with the game after release, it's very common that they downscaled the team a good bit after the release so that there's a smaller portion of the team still working on the game. Ideally, they move those other peoples to a different project that they start development on, like, continue the project pipeline. But there are also a lot of times where they just lay a lot of those people off. Yeah. So content updates, it's one part that can help better than laying everyone off, and it helps the game. But yeah, you got to have something else down the pipeline to do with the rest of the people.
Here's the thing, and I know for those of you guys who just came in from the raid, we were talking about this earlier, and the general consensus is kind of the live service model. A lot of games has been a detriment to the industry, and this is obviously primarily for video games. TTRPGs don't have this problem. Thankfully, thank God they don't have this problem. They have other problems.
That'd be a great problem to have, though.
True. I don't honestly, that might be a topic for another discussion, how to do live service updates for TTRPG, but that's here nor there. Basically, our general consensus here is, live service has been a detriment. We're not going there.
That would get so many people though.
Yeah, that really would. But sorry, I didn't mean to get off on a tangent there.
But, Grimwolfen says pay $2 to reroll your nat one.
Yeah, exactly. That would get people.
Live service have been a good and a bad thing for games, for video games in general. Obviously, all the badge or the microtransactions, the gacha mechanics, the loot boxes, the list goes on. But I think where it solves a problem is what we were just discussing, the having continuous content in the works. So you can keep on your work, you can keep your workforce on. And I think between what you said, Greg, with the royalty pool, and with that, the live service piece, when it's done properly, when it's done right, I mean, that honestly, I think that can go a long way to solving this kind of churn, this fire hire problem that we're seeing now. And I mean, obviously, the reason for the firing is greater than the industry itself. There's a lot of things going on in the world right now that are adding to that. So take that into
right. A couple of things to understand there, though, when it comes to that profit pool piece. I mean, we talked about where the difficulties are with that. And some artists are just not going to want to go for that. That you're going to have that. But the other piece to it is that, I mean, and money's good, don't get me wrong, but that's our purpose for my purpose for what I'm doing as part of this is not, money's good, but I'm not here to make millions of dollars. That's really not where I'm at. That's not where my head's at.
I think Greg, you're speaking for all three of us. I think I don't want to speak for Matt, but I'm pretty sure he's on the same boat.
And we got to be profitable. We have to have a healthy.
Mansion. I just want to be able to afford like groceries and shit.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow. You're asking a lot, man. Anyway,
Right?
I just want to be able to pay some bills, man.
but
That's it.
you know, that's maybe the difference in for some folks, because I mean, you know, a lot of these, and especially public traded companies, things like that. I mean, you know, your investors are there for a reason. I myself, as an investor, I mean, I don't put money into something unless I'm getting a return. Period. That's,
And
I'm not
that's
just giving you
totally
money to go
understandable.
blow it. It's, you know,
That's
I want a
totally
return for
understandable.
my money.
Yeah, so that's a lot of what you see in like some of the major publicly traded companies, to where that's where their concern is. You know, they want to please their investors, and so profitability is priority number one above all else. Which,
Mm.
you know, we've said it before, and we'll say it again. Like, of course, for any company, public or private, making money is important. You gotta keep the lights on, gotta pay your employees, etc. But it's of course there's lines to be drawn there, where how much money is enough and how much money is like just a pure like cash grab at the cost of like the product's, you know, integrity and quality, stuff like that.
Yeah. And Duelist Kind, I mean, you hit it on the head. Like right now, the gaming industry, especially at the high level, at the AAA level, I guess. And I don't want to say high level because we've seen some pieces of crap come out of AAA studios, but at the AAA level, um, it is definitely profit over people, which to me it feels like it's it's counterintuitive. The people are your profit, so why aren't you like? I mean, you have teams and teams of analysts and financial folks. You telling me those guys can't sit there and be like, hey, look, this is for us, for our situation, this is the formula that we need to make long-term profit while making a quality game, and maybe even seeing some immediate profits that we like. You can't tell me there aren't teams out there doing it. It just blows my mind that they're not. But who knows? I don't know. Maybe I'm stupid.
Yeah, and I think again it's kind of like where we see a lot of common differences between publicly traded companies and private companies. Because you have, we talked about this a bit before the raid came in, like how you have Larian Studios, a private company making Baldur's Gate 3, and yeah, they're not trying to nickel and dime people, and you know, they treat their consumers very well because they respect our time and wallets. From Software also has a very good reputation because yeah, they have their paid DLC expansions, but you're getting a lot of value for that. And again, it's not like, oh, you're running out of your health flasks. You know, maybe for $1 you can refresh them. You know, that type of thing.
That I'm pretty sure that's a meme somewhere.
Oh,
But
you know,
yeah.
other companies would do that.
Oh yeah,
If you put like Dark Souls or Elden Ring in say like EA's hands, you know they do
Oh,
something like that.
yeah, without a fucking doubt, without a second's hesitation. But Dino, dude, yeah, I mean, I don't hold back. Trust me, these guys will tell you. I don't think anybody on this podcast holds back at all. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you put out something that your players want to play. And you're gonna have business 24/7. You're gonna have people coming back. Hey, when's the next thing coming out?
The hard part is building the brand and because you have to get
Yeah.
your product in front of people. That's the thing. There's a lot of really great product that's out there. There's great, awesome games that are out there. They never got the marketing. They never got out in front of people. And so it just never went anywhere. And you're welcome.
Yeah, Duelist Kind. I think you hit the nail on the head. And Greg, you're correct. I mean, a lot of really on the spot answers in to this, where Grimwolfen, yes, public companies are beholden to their investors. 100% true, and that's a good and bad thing. I mean, obviously, like Greg said, hey, if you're going to invest some, you want to make a profit on it. But with that aspect of things, most of those investors want to see that upfront profit. They're not there to play the long game. They're there to play the short game. They need to make that quick return and move on to the next thing. And I mean that's up to them.
Yeah,
Personally, I think if you've built a brand, like Greg said, if you've built a track record of putting out quality products and bringing value, and that takes time, and that is the long game.
Mhm.
However, my personal opinion, you do that, every game that you put out, once you've established that, you'll see the benefits of a short-term profitability and the long-term profits of people coming back to play your games, to engage with your content.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, I am in no way a business genius. Not even fucking close. And if I can put that together, obviously I'm pretty sure there's more nuance that goes into that, the explanation I just gave. But if I can put that together, then there you can't tell me that AAA studios can't put two and two together and start moving in that direction.
Yeah, like, and we see companies like Larian Studios and FromSoft doing that very thing. They've just been consistently putting out great content, and they're continuing to grow and become more profitable. Now, granted, it's a lot of effort that goes into that process. Not everyone is capable of coming out with banger after banger, only getting better and better as they goes on. Like it's definitely an achievement that you have a lot of great talent to be able to do that type of thing. Now, granted, when it comes to like the bigger companies, like your Activision Blizzards, your Ubisoft, your whoever, with the amount of capital that they have, I do believe that they are capable of that type of quality and continuing to improve their games to continue to get better and better, as we see from Larian and FromSoft. It's just, again, that's not where their priority is. And so they're much more beholden to the investors, and instead of putting in that great effort of creating an amazing product, they're going for the easier and unfortunately more profitable route of, monetization tactics in order to get their money.
Exactly. Matt and Duel is kind, yeah. Like that type of effort and respect for the craft takes time. And yeah, publicly traded companies don't have that time. At least they think they don't.
Yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 is in dev for about 10 years. Here's the thing, though.
Yeah.
Because, that is a while, but Diablo 4 was also in development for about that same amount of time. And, well, we know there's a big difference between those two games and how they're treated,
Yeah.
One respects its customers, its players' time and wallets, while other does not.
Yeah, I remember when all those games came out, man.
For the work that put into them.
Yeah, Donar, dude, I remember when those games came out, and honestly, I think that is the difference between the gaming industry, in its early stages, and now. Now it's purely about the profit. It's purely about, hey, how much money can we squeeze out of this? Move on to the next thing, squeeze that, move on to the next thing, rinse and repeat. Back then, people, the gaming creators, they created games because those were the things they wanted to see, and hopefully people wanted to play them, and that was it.
Oh God,
I think
Reforged.
Yeah, I think
Oh.
I think the industry has kind of lost some of that passion.
Hey, thank you for the follow.
Thank you for the follow.
Yeah, thank you for the follow.
I'm not going to say those letters. Just thank you for the follow, 1995.
Yeah, I probably would. Yeah, thank you for the follow.
If
man.
there's a way to say it, I don't know what it is. But the gaming industry, honestly, it's I can see why it came to be this way, because the gaming industry overall has massively boomed over the past couple decades. Like its growth is if you look at its growth compared to like other industries over the same period of time,
it's been exponential.
It's astonishing how quickly it's grown. To like Yeah, like where
Yeah.
like, even all of us here, I'm sure remember that like there's a time when we were just kids and gaming was
Stop playing
it's
video games. You're wasting your fucking time.
yeah,
I'm,
or like
I'm
Whatever.
still just a
only
kid.
the nerd kids did or, that type of thing.
Yep. Only nerds did it. Only geeks did it.
Yeah, but as
Yep.
Duelist Kind says, it's everyone thing now. Gaming isn't just for the nerds. You'll find everyone playing games these days. It's grown to that extent, and because of that, there's so many more. A lot more people are buying games. There's so much more money in it. Like overall, it's astonishing. And of course, when there's more money, there's a lot of bullshit that comes along with it.
Yep.
Some good, meaning that you can find games of greater scale and quality, and also you have the spots that we've been talking about where all they care about is that extra dollar bills, and they monetize the shit out of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, as 1995 says, "Mo money, mo problems."
Yeah. I mean,
That's
yeah.
very true.
The gaming industry as a whole, from video games to TTRPGs, have exponentially boomed in the last couple of years. I think 2 points of critical mass happened in the last 10 years. Number one, streaming and let's plays. That happened.
Oh yeah,
And that took it to a more public and larger stage. And then the pandemic. People had nothing else to do. They played video games.
yeah. Those two definitely played a big part because, like,
And then companies with the onset of streamers and let's plays and all that, companies saw, hey, this is profitable. People like this. And instead of making quality games, the majority of them shifted to how can we make the game that reaches the most people to make the most money every time.
appeal
And that's
to
why
a
you see a lot of
wider
cookie cutter stuff.
audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen that with a lot of games, especially games in a series. Like if you look at say Dead Space series, Dead Space 1 to Dead Space 3. Those two games are very different.
Yep.
Like Dead Space 1, that definitely like horror, it's you're just struggling to defeat one thing, and then Dead Space 3 appealing to a wider audience, and now it's a co-op action game. Completely different from what it was initially meant to be. And so it's because a lot of these companies are trying to appeal to wider audiences, we see an almost, I don't know if homogenization is the right word to use, but they go away from, I guess, the more niche, the more specific type of angle they were going at, to very more general and oftentimes simpler mechanics and appeals, to where you see a lot of games end up looking very similar, having a lot of similarities in their mechanics and whatnot. And with according Duelist Kind, Dead Space happened because survival horror was not popular. Yeah, survival horror has always had trouble in the AAA industry.
Yeah. It's
It's
garnered some following now. I've seen it,
Oh
like
yeah,
Dead by Daylight and those kind of games. It's Phasmophobia.
Well,
Resident-
game.
having
Resident Evil, when they got back,
Yeah.
like what was it, 7? Yeah, 7,
so,
when they
yeah.
went to like a first person standpoint. Like they went back to horror roots with 7, because 6,
Mhm.
we don't talk about 6.
It's trash.
There's not.
well, I'll tell
But,
you, what I think
yeah.
has helped that a great deal is having a very popular television series that's based on zombies that actually ran for like 10, 11 seasons.
That's true. Yeah.
That
Walking Dead did help that.
really helped the genre overall, because it became more mainstream, and suddenly it's okay. Suddenly it's okay to be interested in
Telltale
those
Games
things.
as a studio built itself off of the back of those kind of like the Walking Dead series
Mhm.
Yep.
and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean,
it's the way I look at it is tell a great story.
Yep.
That's number one. Tell a great story. And then make sure that you make it easily consumable, which means you need to know what the people want. You need to know how to make it easy for them to be able to use it. Player friendly. So that you're not making a huge, difficult to understand, confusing mess and then putting it out there. It doesn't matter how good the story is. If, like from a TTRPG standpoint, it doesn't matter how great the story is. If the mechanics and the system itself are garbage, it's okay, I can't even understand how to do this. I love this story, but playing it is just like, I'm going to have to create my own way to do it. So, make a great story, because that's the first piece to it, is people want that mental exercise. They want to be able to get lost in the story. They want to create that character and get lost in the story. But then make sure the mechanics are easily consumable. Make sure that the mechanics fit the story, and, there you go. Then it just comes down to market it.
Yeah, it's twofold, story and mechanics, and you got to make sure both are good, because you could have, honestly, I think if there's an imbalance, I think a great game with a bad story is probably better than a bad game with a great story, because I feel like a bad story just leads to boredom.
Yes. Bad
but
mechanics you can fix. Bad story.
Yeah, and if it's like fun mechanics, at least you can get by on that. And I know I've played a couple games where I didn't give a shit about the story, but at least had fun playing the game, so I went through it. But if it's a bad game mechanics, then you could have a great story, but like game mechanics aren't just boring; they can be frustrating. And at least in my opinion, I'm a lot more likely to put that game down if it's just frustrating to play. Even if I, maybe I like the characters, maybe like the story premise, I'm probably not getting through that if the mechanics just bore me or frustrate me.
Huska, welcome in.
Thank you for the raid. Yeah, welcome in. Thank you.
Oh my god, 2 raids one night? It's
Randy and friends, thank you for the follow.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 2 raids in a day. Like, who sacrificed to the Twitch gods? Because it wasn't me. Installing caffeine. Thank you for the follow. Much appreciated.
Same with Randy and friends and Microcosmic God. Man, what a name. Thank you for the follows.
Well, and Dinar dude, hopefully you've been enjoying kind of what you've been listening to so far. I do highly encourage you to listen to the VOD so you can catch kind of what happened earlier. But hopefully you've been having a good time thus far, man.
Yeah, Dill's kind of saying story for you is the most important. And like, yeah, I mean, I don't think you're wrong in that, because I think story versus mechanics, when they're out of sync, it's very much down to the individual of what they prefer.
Yeah.
And,
I'm a
both are good.
I'm a story guy all the way, but I mean the mechanics piece to it, you got to be able to understand the mechanics, and they have to be. I don't want to say simple, although simple is good.
Have to be understandable,
especially for this guy. I mean, but
but here's the thing. You can have simple mechanics, but it's all about how they're utilized. Like if you look at Mario, especially the old school Mario, like old school Super Mario Bros. What is it you do? The main 2 things you do is run and jump. And that's, I mean, besides, a few other very niche actions.
And I remember playing
Fire
that
Flower
game.
and stuff like that.
Well,
that's all you did. But they were able to make an incredibly fun game based on how they utilized those 2 main mechanics and all the things you could do with it. Like, think about jump. Jumping was more than just going up and down or from platform to platform. That's how you attacked your enemies, by jumping on top of them. That's how you activated so many switches. You jump on top of it, you get a block, you jump into it. Like, they tied so many things to that one very simple action.
Hey,
got a couple of
we got a couple of questions in here. This one from Diner Dude. I probably completely butchered your name. I'm sorry. But they're asking, so mechanics and story, which fairly recent games are y'all leaning towards, and which games are you staying away from?
Right now, the two games for me that I'm really loving are Warhammer 40K Darktide by Fat Shark and Cyberpunk 2077 by um, CD Projekt Red. Staying away from, I really don't necessarily stay away from games. I'll try pretty much anything, just for the experience. But I guess to kind of answer that second point, Diner Dude, for me, it's I do like a good story over. I would ideally both of them would be good, but I would want a better story and solid mechanics than great mechanics and a so-so story. Because here's the thing for me with mechanics, at the end of the day, even if they're fun, you're still doing the same shit over and over and over again. That's the thing for me. You're still just doing the same thing over and over and over again. Gets boring, gets repetitive. So yeah, any game with a good story and solid quality mechanics, and you can do both. Here's the thing, and I think if you got a good team, you can do both.
Yeah.
And
That
you should do both. Like Timothy Kane, for those of you guys who don't know, he is the co-founder or co-creator of, or rather one of the creators. I don't even one of the creators of the Fallout series, and he has a list of things that a framework that he works within. He from watching a lot of his videos. He does have a YouTube channel, by the way. He's a programmer and just a creator overall, but I think a lot of his strengths lead to programming and game programming in particular. He has a framework that he works within, and there are core pillars, creative pillars that you have to hit. And I think as a studio, any studio, if you have your pillars set up properly, then your game's going to be good
me too.
every time.
Yeah, I think that's
Hey.
that's something that I've learned in my time studying game design, where game design pillars,
So
they're pretty much, you create these core experiences that you want for your game. And every addition of a new mechanic should appeal to one of those pillars of your game. And if they don't, then maybe you should consider cutting it. That's kind of the idea behind it.
So let's just back up for just a second here, because we're completely answering this question so far from a video game standpoint.
Real.
So now let's also address this question from a TTRPG standpoint, because these are two very different approaches. And they have to be very different approaches. So
Oh yeah, that's true.
but how about that?
Okay, so that's the video game side for me, and I guess I'll answer the TTRPG side. For me, the two games that I'm playing primarily right now are 5th edition D&D and Cyberpunk 20 Cyberpunk Red, excuse me. However, we've towards the end of the show, we'll go into this. We actually have another stream on Friday. I'll let Greg handle that. But we've been tucking into a couple of different systems, namely for games coming out of Free League Press, which are Pirate Borg, which we actually have a special announcement for that. Again, towards the end of this stream. Stay tuned for that. And Alien. So, and those systems are they're solid mechanically. They're interesting mechanically. They're not overly complicated, but they have a good solid foundation in terms of mechanical difficulty and acuity, but they also have solid stories that you can create on top of that, which kind of answers Grim Wolfen's piece there about story being a coat of paint on mechanics. To a degree, I get what you're saying, Grim Wolfen. Where I disagree is they have to answer the question. How do I put this? They have to inform each other, meaning your story should be built on a foundation of quality mechanics, but it should also explain those mechanics. They have to go together. They can't just be just there. They have to make sense together. That's my 2 cents on that.
So
Yeah. As
Could-
far as when it comes to mechanics and story for TTRPGs, their TTRPGs are very interesting. It's very interesting in how people are able to play them compared to like a video game. Because when it's a video game, everything is set because it had to be hard coded into the game by the developers. So
Yes.
you talk to an NPC and they're going to say these words specifically.
With that, I will be
Whereas
right back, guys.
in a TTRPG, everything is extremely fluid. Nothing is set in stone because you don't have a computer running it. You have a human, dungeon master, GM, DM, whatever the game calls the runner of the game. So you talk to an NPC and they could say one thing, they could say another thing. It's all up to the people. And so TTRPGs very much lend themselves to storytelling because any story can be told through them. No two games of even a specific module of D&D necessarily have to tell the same story.
and you get to tell the story. You're not
Yeah.
you're not just following, whatever the predetermined course is.
Yeah, you're not a passenger. You're an
yeah,
active
and-
participant.
And when it comes to like the mechanics of TTRPGs, here's the thing, and this is how I always view every core rulebook of a TTRPG, is that the mechanics they have are mere suggestions. Because just about so many DMs out there are going to have their essentially house rules. Like one common thing in D&D that a lot of DMs don't particularly care for, like spell components or counting the arrows that's in a quiver, stuff like that. A lot
You have to count those?
stuff. See, exactly. So like there could be great mechanics in a TTRPG, there could be bad mechanics in a TTRPG, but at the end of the day, the players are going to they're completely free to disregard those mechanics and just do what they want anyway. You could have a completely garbage rule set, but if they enjoy the world that it's being played in, they could either change, like bastardize the system to something that they think is fun, or like just use a completely different system and still tell the same story. It's incredibly fluid.
Yeah. There's Sam, I kind of agree with you. I have a different experience with that before the game engines. Are you talking like all the way back in like DOS? Because I did some writing back then. I'm dated, yes.
Back in the ancient times.
Abandoned Wars, yep. They're Abandonware, yep. I mean, all the way back to text adventure games. Come on, Frogger, Autobahn. I mean, geez, you guys never heard of these things?
Yeah, I remember Frogger. I played that one.
But yeah, the game engines from a video game standpoint, the game engines definitely gave a opportunity to add depth. And it also gave the opportunity for, some real engagement, real storytelling to go on. The unfortunate part is that the storytelling piece in a lot of games still is kind of lacking. But there are some good examples of some really good storytelling, especially some of like Baldur's Gate 3. I mean, there's some really good storyline that's going on in that game. I love Cyberpunk. I have always loved Cyberpunk. So yeah, I was a little disappointed at first with 2077, but that's really it's come around to being a decent game. The system itself, when it comes to the TTRPG, Cyberpunk Red, definitely is the, updated system, and Red's a fantastic system. I'm still Yeah, I'm a little old school. I still kind of have a little bit of an affair with 2020 going on. But a lot of the stuff from 2020 is being slowly adapted to the Red system. So I'm really looking forward to watching that progression, being part of that progression. Cyberpunk overall is a fantastic genre. Some of the things that we, though, are getting into now is really looking at, we are working more closely with Free League Press right now. So we're going to be doing a lot of work with their games. We just had Luke Stratton on the show last week, to talk about Pirate Borg, and make sure you join us tomorrow night. We are actually doing a live game of Pirate Borg with Luke Stratton as one of our players. So that is going to be a whole lot of fun. Sorry, I just stole your thunder there. Matt's running the game tomorrow, so not me. Yay.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm glad.
I encourage everyone to tune in tomorrow because, Luke Stratton, the creator of Pirate Borg, is going to be playing the game. And he's very excited to be playing the game and not DMing it.
Yeah, he was very very adamant about that, which I totally understand.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. If you make the TTRPG, I'm sure you're almost always running it for other people instead of just being able to sit back and be a player for it. So I'm sure he's very excited, and honestly, I'm excited for it too. It's going to be like a one shot type of story, but I think there's a lot to be fun of. There's a lot of fun to be had in Pirate Borg's world. It's pirates, and there's a lot of just fun things that can happen, and so expect some fun chaos to happen.
Oh yeah, I'm excited for it.
Expect rum, expect
Arg.
yards. Yeah, exactly.
I'm looking forward to being able to skin you scurvy dogs.
And if you make me mad as the DM, I will give you scurvy.
That's the best you got, scurvy? Really? Is it?
It'll be scurvy 2.0, way worse than
Bring it on.
Scurvy 1.
Bring it on,
Okay.
Davy Jones.
But yeah, I mean, oh, what an episode! Have we been all working on our pirate voices? I'm sure these two have. I haven't.
Yeah, I just started like 30 seconds ago.
I'm good at voices of Grimwolf, and I will try though. For you, I'm gonna pledge to try.
Since the day I can speak, I've been practicing my pirate voice.
My character's a
I
mute.
might have to steal that, Downer dude. I might have to steal that. That's actually pretty good.
Fildeen, Fildum, I'll cut your throat if you don't give me the rum.
Ooh, I like it. I am definitely going to try and remember that. Yes, thank you.
As a matter of fact, I'm copy pasting
Great
real
stuff.
quick and dropping it in chat. Because that's some quality stuff right there.
So we have that going on tomorrow night, which will be a boatload of fun, I am sure, no pun intended. And then Friday night we have our Cyberpunk Red with the BOR, which is it's a special campaign that we developed. It was supposed to be a short run campaign, but we've turned it into being something a little different. And so Friday night we find out the aftermath of me trying to kill the team last week. So unfortunately, it didn't work out.
Fun one.
The aftermath of my many nat ones of that session near.
You
weren't trying to kill me. The dice were trying to kill me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, so we'll have that Friday night. And later on this month, we have a couple of things that we're looking at. We are setting up the planning right now to get Thomas Fernstein on, which is the CEO lead dev for Free League Press, on the
Yep.
show. We just don't have a time. We don't have a date locked down yet, but we do have a commitment there. That should be very soon. Predominantly, we want to get him to, speak to his experience and to speak a little bit about some of the new game releases coming out of Free League, in particular, Mutant Year Zero's new content that just came out.
Diner dude, thank you, man. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for having a chat with us. Thanks for the follow, by the way.
You bet.
Yeah, I mean that's what we're here for. We're here to provide you guys with some valuable, hopefully valuable and hopefully valued content, and our perspective on things. Because it's good to have these conversations. I feel because then it just improves the industry. Hopefully.
Ideally.
Yeah, dude,
So
that's the goal.
I'm just going to round this out real quick. We are also working on one of our target games is Vesson, I believe, Rob.
Yes. That's
Okay.
another one we are looking into, if not playing. We're looking to have the creator of that one on at some point.
Yeah, ideally, as we have some of these game creators on, we'll actually be playing their games as well. So give everybody a little bit of a sneak peek as to that. Of course, it's going to have our spin on it. So
Yeah. So expect shenanigans.
And later this month, we are also going to be introducing a Alien stream, which I am very much looking forward to.
Yeah, and the 16th, which will be a special episode of the update log, we'll be having Lord Gasumba on. So for those of you guys who rated in for him from his chat, hopefully you'll join us this coming Monday actually, for that episode where we will sit down with him and discuss kind of his
Old
place
school
in the industry, old school, second edition D&D. The game that he's working on with Trollord Games and all that. We're going to talk about all the things and kind of get an idea of kind of what's coming across the landscape in the TTRPG space.
And it'll give us an opportunity to do a little bit of it's probably a little bit early, but it gives us an opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the things that are coming out of Trollord Games, and it also gives us an opportunity to, spend some time on GaryCon.
Yep.
2024, which, is a big deal. It's also an anniversary for Gary Gygax, so, in the creation of D&D. And
we're planning on being there.
And we're going to be there. We are going to be getting some games on the GaryCon site. Definitely Cyberpunk games. So if you're interested in joining us for a Cyberpunk game for GaryCon next year, as soon as they're up, go check that out. I haven't put anything up there yet. I feel bad, but we are going to get some stuff up there. We're deciding on what else we're going to do. We may do some other games as well, mainly centered around R. Telsorian, and Mike Pondsmith, because Mike Pondsmith is going to be at GaryCon 2024.
Yeah.
And we are also going to have him as a guest on the show. We just haven't locked down a date for that yet either, but we do have a commitment from it.
Yeah. So lots of stuff coming down the pipe, guys. Hopefully you guys stay tuned. Join the Discord. I believe the link has been dropped in the chat quite a few times. Join the Discord. That's where we post a lot of the updates. And if you want to talk to us kind of more directly, when we're not on stream, that's where we're at. That's where you find us. Feel free to drop in, have a chat, toss out some ideas. And we have been tossing this around, but in terms of our games, I believe, Greg, you correct me if I'm wrong, we're in the process of potentially maybe having some of you guys on at some point.
That's always a possibility. Absolutely.
So, but I believe with that all said, again, thank you guys for coming in. This is episode 23 of the update log, the state of the gaming industry. For those of you guys who kind of missed the first half, I highly recommend go watch the VOD after it's posted up. Join our Discord. Follow us on YouTube as well. You can find a lot of our older videos there as well. But otherwise, you guys have a good night. We will see you guys tomorrow and Friday. But we'll definitely see you guys next Wednesday with the update log.
So that is the end of our 3-hour-long 90-minute stream.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think this has been the longest episode update log we've had yet.
Yeah, that was I ain't gonna lie, that was an endurance test boy.
So
but I
we're-
had fun.
My brain hurts after all that talking.
All right, I think I am just going to. Let me see. Actually, I think.
We can pass on the love and read into.
Well, I was looking at that, and Stormy is the only one that I have in here that's on right now. For some reason, it's not showing up for me. So I think we're going to close out right there. You guys all have a good night, and we'll see you tomorrow night,
Right.
7
Adios, guys.
p.m.
Yep.
See you guys next time. Thanks for coming.
Yep. Thanks for coming in. Adios.